River and bring it into the Salt Lake Valley. You'll see here this red line, that's the Salt Lake Aqueduct. Takes water from the base of Deer Creek Dam, brings that water into the east side of the valley. Just a small portion of Jordan Valley's water is delivered in that pipeline. You'll see then also about halfway down the Provo Canyon at the Olmsted Diversion, near Vivian Park, water is diverted there into what we call the Jordan Aqueduct system, brought all the way over to the Jordan Valley Water Treatment Plant, which is in Harriman. And that plant is the largest treatment plant in the state of Utah at 180 million gallons per day capacity. And then it is conveyed, it's raw water to this point, and then treated water conveyed northward in that aqueduct pipeline, approximately along 3200 west, all the way to about 2100 south. And then finally, this yellow line you'll see here diverts water at the mouth of Provo Canyon. It's called the Murdoch Diversion. That's a new aqueduct pipeline called the Provo River Aqueduct. It was built rather recently. It's a 10.5 foot diameter pipeline that provides new capacity for future growth, bringing water once again into the Salt Lake Valley. So those are the three major conveyance systems. On this map, we're zooming out just a little bit. It's a little busier, but we also capture Strawberry Reservoir. And the reason I wanted to show this map is I'd like to show some of the new infrastructure that's been installed recently that is being built to provide for future growth, essentially. The first I'd like to tell you about is this area right here with this red pipeline, and you'll see here CWP Wellfield. It's called the Central Water Project. It's a project that's being developed by the Central Utah Water Conservancy District, and it's a local project in which the Central Utah Water District acquired all of the water rights in the old Sharon Still site and had a rather large water supply. We have contracted with Central Utah. They've built this system, and we have connected to it to bring new water supply into our area. We're currently growing into that. Also, you'll see here the ULS pipeline, which is this line. ULS stands for Utah Lake System, and it's the final component of the Central Utah Project water supply. Turns out that this pipeline will convey Strawberry Reservoir water directly, basically, from a series of tunnels and pipelines here all the way from the Spanish Fork Canyon, mouth of the canyon, up to the Provo River Aqueduct, the new aqueduct pipeline. And that provides a new source of water into our valley that probably won't come online until about 2025, 2026. And then I want to point out the Southwest Aqueduct. As it turns out, this blue line, the Jordan Aqueduct, is nearing its capacity limit. It was installed many years ago, and we're just about at the extent of its water supply capacity. And so we are now installing what we call the Southwest Aqueduct, that little yellow line, and then there's also a raw water segment that's being installed before the Jordan Valley plant. That is sort of it's a parallel line, and it's basically to increase the capacity of that conveyance system, and we'll be installing more segments of this going northward in the future. Okay, in this graph, this really shows Jordan Valley's historic water delivery since its inception in 1951. And you'll see the blue bars since 1951, how we've increased in our water deliveries. In year 2018, we delivered a little over 100,000 acre-feet of water. An acre-foot of water is the amount of water that covers an acre, about one foot deep, and it's about 326,000 gallons. And it's basically the amount, about 6/10 of an acre is what a family of four, a homeowner of four, would use in a year. So that kind of gives you a feel for what an acre-foot is. This line is what our demands would be moving into the future if we can meet our water conservation goals. Our water conservation goal currently is to reduce water use 25% by 2025. We use year 2000 as the baseline year. This line shows what our water demands will be if we don't meet our water conservation goal and we continue to use water as we did in year 2000. That's the year that we use for measurement. That's our baseline year. And you can see that there's a significant water supply savings if we can meet that water conservation goal. It's important. This graph, I thought you might be interested. This is a little different in that it shows on the y-axis here cubic feet per second. This is our peak demands that we see throughout the year. And you'll see we have the months January through December. And here, for the last 3 years, here's our sort of our baseline demand. That's wintertime demands, basically indoor use within our service area. And then what happens, let's see what happens in the summertime when we start to irrigate, we start to use water outdoors. So the additional water that's being supplied is for outdoor use. The ratio between our summertime use and our wintertime use is 5 times, 5 to 1. And what you can see here is that when we design and develop our infrastructure, we have to design for those peak demands. Consider how much savings can be made if we didn't use so much water in the summertime. The greatest way to conserve water during the summer peaks really is by reducing landscaping water. And most of the landscaping water is being applied to turf grass in Salt Lake County. I thought you might be interested in Harriman City's contract with Jordan Valley Water. It's currently 2,667 acre feet per year. In 2017, 3,719 acre feet was delivered by Jordan Valley to Harriman, and then you can see the 2018 number. Turns out that in 2018, the total amount of water that Harriman used was around 8,000 acre feet. So you have your own supplies. That also includes your secondary water deliveries within Harriman City. This map really encompasses, or this graph shows our water supply plan and moving forward. And what you'll see here is that we actually plan out usually 50 years in advance. And there are many reasons for that, but one of the biggest reasons is it now takes decades to develop new water supplies. So in order for us to stay ahead of growth, we need to be planning now for the water supplies that we need to have in place for 2065. This gray area is our current water supply, and then these colors are new water supplies that will come online in the future. I already talked about the Central Water Project. That's the project with Central Utah Water District. This blue here is the ULS project. That's the final component of the Central Utah project. And you can see a couple other projects here that we'll be putting in place in the future to stay up with demands. This is our demand that's being projected based on population growth within our service area and based on our meeting our water conservation goal. I told you that it was 25% by 2025. We're now considering a new goal. This actually is a 30% reduction since year 2000. So this kind of ratchets up the conservation a little bit. And then once again, this dash line shows where we would be if we didn't meet our water conservation goal. And we would continue to use water as we did in year 2000. And just to let you know, there isn't enough water to be able to deliver if we fell back into our old ways. So we're seeing some good progress in water conservation, but we need to see more. Once again, the difference between these two lines is significant as far as water supply savings moving forward. But there's another element that's entered the picture that we have to start planning for and perhaps even be concerned about, and that has to do with increasing temperatures here in Utah and here in the Salt Lake Valley. We've noted a marked increase in temperatures almost every year. This spring being the only outlier that we've seen since year 2000, actually. And you can see here, since 1948 at the Salt Lake International Airport, we've seen over a 5-degree Fahrenheit increase in temperature. Our climate is changing. Increasing temperatures naturally requires more water for our plants. Our plants require more water. And so that's a concern in moving forward. We're seeing a little bit of lengthening of the growing season. Once again, if the public wants to start watering earlier and later in the season, it means that we have to come up with more water. We have to go out and develop more water, unless we see some significant changes in the way we landscape. So we've developed this new water supply plan, which is a plan that really takes into consideration climate change effects. We now have pretty good global climate models, and what we're seeing is that the models are predicting that our water supply is going to decrease in the future. At the same time, our demands are going to increase. What this shows is all the same water supplies that I just showed, but it also then shows the Bear River Development Project, the red, coming online in the future, just because we're seeing this changing climate condition that I've talked about. Okay, I'm going to change a little bit here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other water infrastructure improvements that we're making. Most of them we're making now are really to supply water to growing needs in southwest Salt Lake County. And so the Provo River Aqueduct, which I've already talked about a little bit, 10.5-foot diameter pipe, we extended it for almost 22 miles through Utah County to, from the mouth of the Provo Canyon all the way into Salt Lake County. Jordan Valley was a major player in the construction of this line, and we have acquired significant capacity rights in this pipeline for our future growth, much of which the new water will be going to the south, to southwest Salt Lake County. On 102 South, we've extended pipelines from the Jordan Aqueduct at 3200 West all the way out to about 70th West. You might ask, what does that have to do with Harriman? It turns out that our water supply network, our network here on 102 South actually provides water going southward into Harriman, and this provides a redundant system for if there are other parts of our system were to go down during, say, the summertime. This is a backup. The Central Pipeline Project, this is the Central Water project that I've talked about. We had to go get the water from the Sharon Steel site well field, so we installed a 48-inch line from that well field all the way into 150th South. So this is a new supply, we're growing into it, and it's very much necessary for our continued growth. Lots of improvements on 118 South, 42-inch and 48-inch pipelines extending westward from the Jordan Aqueduct system all the way out to U-111, then also pipelines along U-111 to interconnect 102 South to 118 South, and there you have the loop in providing water to southwest Salt Lake County. And then the Southwest Aqueduct, you see that 66-inch line on the right-hand side there. That's a large pipe that's being constructed adjacent to the Jordan Aqueduct to increase capacity. Another shot of the Southwest Aqueduct on the raw water side. With all this work being done, Jordan Valley is entering into a new phase of master planning work. We want to take another look at where we're going. We want to, once again, we'll have census data soon with population. We're going to project out, again, 50 years. We'll be involving Harriman City in our master planning work. We need to identify demands. We need to identify the amount of water conservation we think we can achieve in the new water supply infrastructure that needs to be built, along with water supply projects. We expect that work to be done by 2020. So that's something you can look forward to. Okay, I'm going to let Matt take it from here for the next two items, and he's going to talk about the effects of increasing land development density.
So we've covered quite a few issues that we've been looking at as a water district. As you can see, the exploding population and the threat of climate change has us thinking and reevaluating some of the conditions that we're facing. And with that is a trend in population density. As you know, that's very common now to see increased density in our developments where we're packing more people per acre, basically. So what does that do to water use? And that's something that we've been trying to come to terms with over the last couple of years. And some of our initial studies, we feel like we're getting a better sense of what could potentially happen. So the two things that we're really trying to find out is what impact does population density have on annual gallons per capita per day per acre, and what impact does population density have on annual volume of water delivered per acre. So you have the number of gallons delivered per person, and then you have the amount of water delivered per acre. So to do this, we actually came up with three different locations actually lived. It made it really convenient. We looked at an acre, and we looked at the number of people that could fit in each of those. So on the left, 4 traditional houses, single-family residential houses, about a quarter-acre lot. The middle one, you'll see about 18 townhomes in an acre, and the one on the right is 60 apartments in an acre. So with that, we simulated some results. So we looked at some averages and some trends, and we looked at how much people are using indoors, and then how much they're using outdoors. And what happens is, as you increase the density, typically you're decreasing the amount of landscaped area. So you'll see your outdoor usage goes down, your indoor usage goes up, but one of the consequences with that indoor usage, it's needed all year long. So you can see over here where that pattern that Bart showed, indoor use, this is our quarter-acre situation, the single-family homes, really low. You peak in July. Actually, in July, you go higher than anyone else, and then slowly you wrap back down. You see with the townhomes, it's a little more moderate. It's a little more buffered. You hit your peak here, goes down. But what you'll notice in the apartment scenario, your usage stays pretty consistent throughout the entire year. So this peak is less pronounced than it was with the lower density scenarios. Just to give you a sense of what that might look like, and this might be kind of small, but option 1 on the left, if we say, how do we place 1,000 people into 100 acres? So option 1 is we continue the traditional single-family route where we're putting a quarter acre, we're getting about 12 people in each of those acres. You can see each of these boxes represents an acre, and then there's about 12 in each of them, all the way down to about right here where we get 4, and this is the number of acres left. I don't dare count in a situation like this, but you can see there's not very much left. That's really the number of acres available for future commercial, industrial, and institutional use, and any additional residential. In the option 2, we're doing all 60 unit apartment complexes. So instead of 12 people per acre, you're looking at 105 people per acre. You can see you can stuff that group in a much smaller space, which the nice thing is we get a lower gallons per capita per day, right? Because that group of people, they're requiring less water on a day-to-day basis. The problem that we're looking at, though, is all that additional gray space. So that means that we have a lot more space that can be developed and potentially be high dense. And if you have high dense in even more acres, the consequence is a lot more water needing to be delivered. So I'll actually show you this in a sense in this back slide because I want you to see the difference in the simulation. But here, in this case, where you're going from 265 acres to acre feet to about 69 acre feet, when you actually compare the gallons used per acre, you can see here where we're getting the lower gallons per capita per day. We compare the 236 gallons per capita per day for the homes versus 61-ish for the apartments. But the total volume delivered, this is in gallons, but 2.3 million gallons versus 1 million gallons in a year. So as a water district, that's very concerning because a couple things. One, you have to provide water for all year long, and that potential for that future development to also demand additional water. We did a secondary study. I'm not going to get into this too much, but we actually looked at our retail service area. We had census block information. We combined the two to see if the simulated results also occurred with real data, and it showed the exact same trend. As the number of people increase, your gallons per capita per day will go down, but the gallons needed for that acre go up. So it's just nice to have a second source. So our conclusions were, as population density increases per acre, per capita use decreases, higher population density leads to a larger volume of water delivered annually, and the increase in total volume per acre actually outpaces the reduction in per capita use, which is also a little bit concerning. So, Bart mentioned that we're looking into future supply and demand planning. One of the things that we're also in the middle of right now is doing a new water conservation plan update. And with that plan, potentially the state is looking to set new water conservation goals, and that affects all of us. And with those goals, we're trying to figure out, okay, what does that mean for our service area? So with this, we actually wanted to look at, the Wasatch Front Regional Council actually created the traffic analysis zones. I'm not sure if some of you are familiar with that data. We actually extrapolated that data and combined it with that study that I just described, and we came up with the gallons per capita per day adjustment for each traffic analysis zone throughout our entire service area. The darker the blue you see means it's getting more dense, and the more amber color means they're getting less dense. One of the things that we discovered, at least in terms of the next 11 years or so, is as some areas, so we could show our retail area, you can see Draper here, South Salt Lake, South Jordan, Riverton, Harriman, you're actually going to see a reduction in gallons per capita per day because naturally from the increase in density. So negative 1.2 over the next 12 years for Harriman. But what's happening at the exact same time, which was something that surprised us, is many areas are getting less dense at the same time. If you think about some of your neighborhoods when you grew up, maybe we have a bunch of little kids running around, you're spreading out those gallons for your landscape over many people, you get a bunch of empty nesters, you're getting less dense. However, the landscape requirement's very similar, the gallons per capita per day are going up. So in total, as you look at the entire service area over the next 12 years, we're seeing a negative 0.5 reduction, which was not nearly as dramatic as we were expecting with these trends in higher density. So this data could be wrong, but that's based on the Kempsey Gardner Institute population projections and everything. So that's what we're seeing. So with all that discussion about density, we thought maybe that was our silver bullet to get to our water conservation goal. It doesn't seem to be. So what is the role of water-wise landscaping? And Bart mentioned this a little bit when we talked about where our water is being used. So you can see annually, 40% of our water is being used indoors. And just for that really short growing period that we have, about 6 months, 60% of our water is being used outside. That's a problem, and it's concerning, and it's something that we're looking to address, especially as we look to meet the demands of a future population. One of the issues, though, that many of you probably think of when you think of landscapes is this idea of a barren wasteland of rocks, cattle skulls, and, I don't know, cacti, whatever. And that's a concern, and I think for many years, a lot of people looked at water-efficient landscaping as a sacrifice. You're asking me to sacrifice something for me now so someone can have something in the future. And those are real concerns. And we don't want our cities and we don't want our towns to look ugly. I mean, we want them to be interesting and compelling and beautiful. So in Utah, we have an interesting extreme. And I think if you look at the slide on the left where you see your typical grass landscape, that's an extreme landscape. It's typical around here, but it's extreme. Wall-to-wall green grass requiring a ton of water. Versus this one on the right, which is the fear that a lot of people have. We call them xeriscapes very often. They're not. They're based xeriscape, which is an academic hoity-toity term that Denver Water started that ended up hurting it because everyone started looking at it in a very negative perception and context. We're not talking about that either. We did a focus group, and some of the things that we wanted to talk about was based on this focus group. We had people come into the Conservation Garden Park. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. It's on 82nd South and 1300 West. It's water-efficient landscaping, and we say, hey, what do you think about xeriscapes? Well, most people said, hey, they're weedy, they're rocky, no place for my kids to play, they're boring, and cold and unfriendly. And will you please do it now? I mean, that proposal seemed very difficult for a lot of people to accept, and we're saying, do all these things that you hate just for water. One of the things we want to look at, though, is like, what do you want in your landscape? Because a lot of people just have accepted and adopted a traditional landscape just because that's the way we've always done it. I don't know if a lot of us have thought a lot about how we're using our landscapes. So we started drilling into that as well. What do you use your landscape for? What do you want it to be? Well, people do want it designed for Utah. They want it to be beautiful. They want it to be easy. They want a lot of things. They want it to be functional. They want it to be low maintenance. They want it to have simple irrigation requirements. They do like water efficiency, but it's probably not the most compelling reason to do something. And they want it to match any budget. So with those needs, we feel like we had to come together and come up with a solution for landscaping that wasn't so focused on water efficiency, but was comprehensive in its approach. It can meet some of these demands that people have for their landscapes, but also achieve good water conservation. And that's where the idea of localscapes came from. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term. It's a landscaping movement and trend that's happening within Utah. It's Utah, homegrown, and it's really catching fire with the public. And the interesting thing is, it saves a lot of water. So, but that's not why we're doing it. So 5 steps to a localscape. You start with what we call the central open shape. We want grass in our landscapes. If we're going to have it, let's put it in places where it's going to be successful. Let's not put it in weird default ground cover situations as a pathway or that little odd bit over here where it fails anyway. Park strips are a good example. We're in July, that park strip's on fire and it's all yellow. Those are areas where grass doesn't do well, and we've been putting it there. So let's focus on putting grass in a central open shape where we can use it, it's functional, and it's in a good designed element. So step 1. Step 2 are gathering areas. So people say, well, if you don't have grass, what do you do? Well, all this stuff goes outside of the central open shape. We call these gathering areas. They're patio systems. You can put them in your front yard. You can put them in your backyard. Let's congregate. Let's use this land, and let's keep it out of the central open shape. And what you're doing when you do that is you decommission parts of your landscape, less maintenance, no irrigations required, no weeding. It's just gathering areas. So you can see here where we've highlighted those in this sample landscape. This is like an overhead view of a landscape. The next one we call activity zones. So things like vegetable gardens, storage sheds in a way, playground areas, things like that. Once again, outside of the central open shape. Let's decommission it. Let's make it so we don't have to irrigate them very much. And what that does also is it decreases your maintenance significantly. So instead of having to mow and trim all these little odd areas, you're actually pushing all that outside of your grass area. So no more playground sitting in your grass, then you have to weed around or trim it and hurt things all around it. So that's what number 3 is. 4 is paths. So now that we have all these elements, we connect them with pathways. And then finally, what shows up in the end are your planting beds. So it's the reverse of how everyone, apparently, I'm not a landscape designer, but this is apparently the opposite of the way you're taught in school. They typically say, design your planting beds, design all these other elements. We're saying the planting beds appear at the very end of the process. You put a good layer of mulch on them, you put plants in them, and they're gonna look great. So here's an example of someone that went through the process. This is your typical, our outreach staff likes to call it blandscape. Very traditional, all grass. They went from that to a localscape. Most people see that landscape. They don't think, oh, that's got to be water efficient. They think it's beautiful, it's more functional, it still has lawn, so I can do the things I want to do on lawn, and it meets my needs. Another area where we talk about reducing maintenance, you can see it's very clean lines. So we still, once again, you don't have to have grass in a local scape, but if you do, you put it in these areas like this, very clean lines, easy to trim around, easy to mow, and easy to irrigate. The nice thing about the irrigation is that you have drip irrigation in the planting beds, and you have spray heads in the grass. Very simple irrigation setup. So all these great things we think are offered to homeowners that adopt this landscaping style, but for us as a water district, the reason why we care is that you see one traditional landscape uses enough water for 3 local scapes. And in the end, that's something that we all benefit from, especially as we look at some of the daunting things that we may be facing as we look into the future. So, just to give you a sense of some of the programs that are being offered to Harriman City and to the residents, this is the member agency grant program. I'm not sure if you're involved with some of the decision-making behind this, but this year Harriman did apply for this grant for funding secondary meters. Programs that are more, these programs are water conservation projects that work best for your city, and that's something the city can decide in their proposal. To the residents, we offer these programs on Utah Water Savers, so you may be familiar with this. Smart controller rebates, toilet replacements for homes that are older than 1994, Flip Your Strip, which is a park strip replacement program. We offer $1 to $1.25 if you attend a class per square foot to change your park strips out. Landscape consultations are free consultations for you. You can have someone come to your house, they look at your landscape design and your irrigation system, and they'll give you recommendations. Finally, you see Local Scapes rewards. We're actually offering people money now to do landscapes that meet these standards. So if anyone, whether it's a new construction or it's a retrofit, if you're doing a landscaping project, come talk to us, and we probably have some rebates and funding available for you or your residents. Yeah, we're seeing this year has really been the first year we've been pushing really hard with these new programs. They were in pilot phase last year, and we're seeing a ton of interest. And one of the things that we've noticed is that some of the cities are doing a lot to advertise and market these programs to their residents. So for example, West Jordan, I don't know, we need to figure out what they're doing, but for some reason their residents are taking advantage of these programs at a hotter rate than anyone else. And we need to find out why. We believe it's because they're incorporating the messaging in some of their bills and water use reports. But yeah, we are seeing a lot of cities interested in this, in these programs, particularly because we're doing all the work with the back end, and then when we do consultations, we actually do have Harriman City staff that like to come out on those consultations and meet with your residents and talk about these things, which has been a great partnership as we've been able to do that. This one is more for commercial, industrial, institutional projects. We call them landscape leadership grants. This is for highly prominent projects that could use water efficient landscaping and maybe even promote it. These are bigger projects that you may be interested in looking at. With all of these programs, we're looking at very similar landscaping requirements. And that's the one thing that Bart's going to talk about now. So we've talked about all these ideas of landscaping, ways to do landscaping that hopefully meets the needs of the cities in terms of beauty, but also meets these really real conditions that we're facing going forward in terms of delivering water. And with that, our board has been hearing a lot of these things, and we've had a lot of discussion. So I'll turn the time back over to Bart to give you a sense of just where those discussions are going.
So I just wanted to touch on this last topic, and I know we've taken a lot of your time, which we really appreciate. So our board is, well, some things are changing, as you might expect. First of all, for us to go out and develop new water supplies it's just becoming a lot more expensive. All of the cheap water has been developed. When we go out and develop supplies, we have to go further out and spend a lot more money. At the same time, we're seeing increased densification, which concerns us with respect to future water supply. So as a result, and I'll tell you, I'll also just be quite honest with you, the Olympia Hills subdivision was a game changer for everybody, including Jordan Valley Water. And as we looked at the potential demand of that developed area, it's when our board started to talk about a couple of issues. The first, I'll start with the second one first, which is the water availability fee. Our board is now studying whether or not for new annexations, new lands that come into Jordan Valley Water that are actually new lands that also be outside of, say, Harriman or other member agencies. After they're annexed into Harriman, say, then they come to us for annexation. We're looking at potentially assessing a water availability fee. We're studying this now. We don't know what form that would take. It could take a form from, say, cash up front to help go out and purchase new water supply, but it also could be a change in the way we bill for water. We may have, say, a Block A water, which is our current water supply, Block B being future water supply, where we have to go out and spend a lot of money. That's being studied. The board is also interested in new annexations to include a requirement for water-wise landscaping, incorporating the water-wise landscaping standards that we've put together that would be along the lines that Matt just talked about with respect to localscapes, requiring that to be installed in the future, which for these new developments, which will help us significantly with meeting water conservation goals. The board in November executed this resolution with respect to the water availability fee, and so it basically just says that we're studying how we might be able to move forward with this. Once again, nothing's been decided here. This is our current service area, which I think I've already shown. The gray areas are member agencies. The other areas, the dark red, is our retail service area. So it would be new lands that lie outside of this current boundary that we have. And that's what we have for you today. And we've taken a lot of your time, but we're also here to answer any questions that you might have.
One quick one on that part.
Yes.
Let everybody else ask a question back on a few weeks ago when we did this course for the Southwest Mayor's Caucus, and I asked them to come here and present to all of you for a lot of reasons. But on that last one, we didn't get to this part in our conversation. Would you go back to that last slide?
Yeah.
The idea of an annexation fee or an availability fee or the Block A, Block B is interesting. Looking at that map, if those outlying areas annex into an existing district, would that still apply? Rather than annexed as a new body into Jordan Valley, what if they annex into Harriman City? Would they still pay that fee or be a Block A?
That's correct. So any new lands that annex into, say, Harriman or Riverton or West Jordan that are currently outside of your current boundaries, that would then come to Jordan Valley and petition Jordan Valley for annexation, those would be the lands that would be subject to a water availability fee.
You talked about the potential of like an Olympia Hills or something being a game changer in terms of how you view it. So as you've gone back and looked at your projections out for the next several years, do you feel like saying that it's a game changer, how much do you think that it actually affects what you've projected?
So Matt has shown you what our projection would be for about the next 10 years, which basically, if you look at our per capita use, it's not going to change it all that much, even if we're seeing a transition to more densely populated areas. It really comes later after that period when we get into the 2040s, the 2050s, and 2065. Even we'll probably go out to 2070 because here we are in 2020 already. And so what that does to us is it does start to, it changes what our water supply plan is going to be. basically it's going to require more water, probably, depending on how each area is being developed. It may be that we have highly dense areas but lots more open space. I think Jordan Valley would probably advocate that there would be more open space if there's people are going to need it. If there's densely populated areas, and we would be in favor of perhaps using secondary water, Utah Lake water, to irrigate those open spaces.
So, do you mind flipping back to slide 25? It's how to place 1,000 people into 100 acres.
I'm gonna have Matt come up because this is his slide.
Sure. Well, that's fine. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you find it.
Where is it? Did I pass it? Oh, there it is. There we go. Yes.
So I'm a numbers guy with this, and I want to just make sure in my mind I'm comparing apples to apples. So if, and I'm not saying that would ever happen, but if on the right we actually ended up having that same density cover 84 acres, we're looking at an 8.5 multiplier of that 22 million gallons. Is that correct? So we'd be roughly 189 million gallons used if we covered that amount of space?
I'm not good at math on the spot, but yes,
Okay.
it sounds correct.
And then the other part is if we actually localscaped the left side, we can reduce the amount of usage, but on the right side, there's not much reduction that could occur.
Correct. In this scenario, there's very little landscaping. It's more in line with this
Okay.
right here.
Okay, so on the left side, if you went back to that, at least, and I could be wrong, you can correct me, we could potentially reduce the amount of usage by up to 66%. Is that what you said? About a third
Yeah.
of usage if we localscape.
Correct.
Okay, so long term, we could reduce it on the left, but we couldn't if we kept the density trend on the right.
Right, and one of the things that gets difficult, especially when we talk about future, is that if we look at water supply sources and we look at all the landscapes that have so much grass right now, it gets to the point where we have to target all that existing landscaping. So the difference in our analysis is about 5 times the cost. So if we can get it installed right the first time, versus going out later and doing cash for grass situations. I mean, you've seen what California's been doing, what Southern Nevada Water's been doing, where they've been in emergency mode, where they've had to spend $5 to $6 per square foot for removal. So to put that in terms for like a quarter-acre lot, you'd be giving someone $30,000 to $40,000 to replace the landscaping on their landscape. So that's the situation we're trying to avoid by adopting the landscaping standards now.
So with some of, and I know you work with a lot of cities, so with master development agreements or with potential city ordinances, have you seen other cities implement things that actually with future developments sort of encourage that to conserve the water?
The new style, so not directly at this point. We have some cities that are doing some serious analysis and consideration of it right now. Draper City's another city that's really looking into it. South Jordan's been looking into it. So that there are, but I think a lot of us are actually coming to terms with this knowledge that we've been gaining over the last few years to see like, oh, we didn't think that we'd have a water supply problem. And I think a lot of us now are coming to terms with this new reality. So.
Yeah.
Like new homes, what are you guys giving as incentives to the city for developers to use it?
It depends. So the Landscape Leadership Grant Program, it's more for commercial projects. So that one we do fund a little bit higher. But the one for residents, the one that I showed you, we call it Localscapes Rewards. And I can give you, we actually have a backup slide where I can show you real quick that talks about it. So we looked at a 0.22 acre property. And we designed 2 landscaping plans, one traditional, one localscape. And you can see here, traditional landscape, dense planting against the foundation, lots of grass in the park strip. Have to have that kidney bean island, you know, that's something that we have a lot of around here. And we said, we actually went to 3 different contractors and we compared this plan to this plan. So you can see a lot of the plants are in similar locations. We pulled some of the plantings away from the foundation of the home. Trees are in similar locations. You can see the central open shape, no grass in the park strip, bigger patio system, see your pathway connectors. We think a better landscape. We had these 3 contractors come to us, and then we did a do-it-yourself bid, and the cost difference is about $2,000 between the 2. Now, that's the difference that it would be if you did it at the beginning. This is not the cost if you were doing a retrofit. So the Local Scapes Rewards program is about that cost differential. So if you did a quarter-acre property, you're probably in the $2,000 to $3,000 range in terms of a rebate for a project like that. So, and the main things you're looking at is you're probably going to have more hardscape, probably going to have more plants. Everything else mostly cancels each other out in terms of cost, at least from what we've heard. So.
I have a few questions. You made a comment about new capacity, and it looks like you're doing a great job with new capacity, but the problem with new capacity is it doesn't equal new water. You can have all the great infrastructure in the world, but you have to be able to fill them, and we're drawing resources from all over. We're draining from the basin, we're draining from all over to try and fill these pipes, so it's super concerning to me that we won't be able to fill the pipes because we'll max out on water, because it's not like we can go buy it wherever we want to buy it from. You talked a ton about meeting these goals. You know, all your graphs and everything are about meeting goals. You said we're doing okay. How well are we doing at meeting the goals that have been set already since 2000? Where's the gap there? And if there's a gap there, how well do you really think you're going to meet the 25% goal?
So as of 2018, the end of 2018, we had achieved about a 17% reduction since year 2000, and that's slightly behind where we need to be for the goal. In fact, we report to our board. We have ways to measure performance, and we have a performance indicator that now, instead of being in the green, which is good, is now in the yellow because we slipped a little bit in our water conservation last year, and it was mostly because we had such a hot, dry summer, and September was really hot and dry, and there's just a lot of water demand. So that's where we are. But what we're seeing now is that we're not going to really be able to achieve any more water conservation without structural changes. Structural changes being water-wise landscaping. Ordinances, a water-wise ordinance is a structural change that will result in new savings. Our park strip program, Flip Your Strip, every time the grass comes out of a park strip where it's using overhead spray and it's wasting water everywhere. If you do the park strip, if you take out the grass and put in water-wise plants and mulches, you can make them look really nice. There's a tremendous amount of savings because of the drip irrigation system there. And so we're looking now at continuing our water conservation education programs because we need to continue educating, but we think we've almost saturated the results. I don't think we can go much further. It's now going to have to be structural. So that's why we're talking so heavily about landscaping changes that need to be made moving forward. And we want to exceed that 25% goal. We really need to provide a sustainable water supply moving forward.
Are you guys actively soliciting and meeting with cities to really help them? Because it sounds like you need to be meeting with cities to change ordinances and really implement those internally in each city. Are you guys actively doing that?
We are, and we appreciate the meeting tonight. And we're going to be scheduling more of these with all of the agencies that we supply water to. We did a round last year. We're going to do a round or two this year with respect to these discussions. We hope that city councils and the planning commissions will instruct staff to work with Jordan Valley Water. We have a model ordinance now that we've put together. We've taken all the best parts of all the western states ordinances, communities ordinances, then we've put that together, and we have, I think we have a very nice model ordinance along with some water-wise standards that we think will work for all end use, including commercial and institutional and industrial.
One comment on that, though, is that we did talk to a lot of cities locally when we were doing that research for the model ordinance. There are aspects to the ordinance that aren't necessarily water conserving, but they are for aesthetic purposes. And one of the things to talk about is just with park strips, because that is a lightning rod, maybe, potentially, because we all don't want to see weedy either rock or just a bunch of concrete all over the place. One of the things that we talk about with the Flip Your Strip program is actually required that you install a 50% plant canopy on that park strip with drip irrigation. And part of that is it can support things like street trees or other, nice looking perennials and things like that. So we can still have what we've heard is just we want to be able to have, we want our trees, we want to be able to have nice, beautiful places to go. And we hope that by allowing those types of things, even though they don't really help water conservation, but they help with some of those aesthetic concerns that people may have with those types of landscapes.
I just have one more follow-up question, thank you for that. How concerned are you about the over-allocation of so many of these water supplies, like Colorado River and things like that? Because it's my understanding they're extremely over-allocated.
Yeah, it is a concern. The 1922 Colorado River Compact was written when we were in a wet period. And there isn't as much water there as we thought we had back then. Jordan Valley, of course, Jordan Valley Water Supply, the largest part is Central Utah Project Supply. It's a very stable, good supply. It's a portion of Utah's allocation of Colorado River. But in the future, what we're looking at is more reverse osmosis treatment of, say, Utah lake water. It's an expensive process, and we're going to do that through shallow wells. We'll be drilling shallow wells along the Jordan River. We have the water rights to do that, but once again, it's expensive. And then really the last water hole where there's still water available, very controversial here in the, especially, well, in the state of Utah, especially in northern Utah, is the Bear River. And we are keeping our options open on the Bear River. We have acquired most of the right-of-way necessary to construct a future water treatment plant and also to build pipelines. The State Division of Water Resources is charged through the Bear River Development Act, the state law, to develop that water and build the reservoirs necessary and to put that water to beneficial use. So we're working on that. At the same time, we're trying to work on our water conservation goals. And it's possible that, in year 2000, our plan was that we would need to have Bear River water by 2015 or 2020. It's now shown to be needed around 2045 to 2050. Let's just keep pushing that down the road if we can.
Thank you.
Bart and Matt, thank you so much for your time. The only request I do have is you talked about some of the ordinances that you guys have put together. If you could email that to the city staff, and maybe they can distribute that to the council and the planning commission, that'd be great.
We can do that.
All right, thank you so much. If we, at this time, can move on to item 2.3, which is an update on the general plan. It's just a comprehension of what it really means. You can realistically all of this is
when they come out. I'm like, I need them to come out and help me because I don't know.
We get a lot from. So we can have some. Well, I think the number here is roadways. We showed it. So right now, this is what we're using,
Our grass is really
and this is what we're using.
nice.
So we have about 13,000.
They're homes.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you for having us today. I'm Susie Petheram with FFKR. I'm the project manager for the Harriman General Plan. I also have Matthew Lee here from FFKR with me. We met with our technical advisory committee just prior to this meeting and had a great discussion on the outreach and surveys, some of the analysis and the scenario building, as well as had an update from our transportation consultant. So today I just wanted to give you a quick update on what we've been doing, what we've been hearing from the community outreach, and then the main focus is to review the survey questions that we want to put out using the contract that the city has with Y2 Analytics to do a formal statistically valid survey that they'll administer. So I'll just go through a few slides with some highlights, and then we'll get to those survey questions to go through with you tonight. So just where have we been with the outreach so far? Our strategy has been to get out into the community and attend community events that are already being planned and organized by the community so that we reach a diverse group of people. We're not just holding an open house and waiting for people to come to us, but we're getting out there and embedding ourselves in the Harriman community from a lot of different standpoints and venues. So we've been at the rodeo, we were at the Memorial Day breakfast, and we were at Town Days. The rodeo and the breakfast had some moderate input, but at Town Days, we were there all 3 days, and I think staff said, upwards like 100, 200 people stopped by. We really accumulated a lot of different comments and had some great input on the questions that we asked. So, things that we've been hearing as far as aspirations for Harriman's future, just looking at live, work, play neighborhoods, non-HOA communities. I think some people are in those double HOA areas, and that was the main frustration with those. Looking to preserve open space when possible, more bike lanes and trails and transit options, and then just looking at safer streets, probably from a pedestrian and bicycle component rather than driving perspective on those safer streets. The things that people value is really those family-friendly neighborhoods and sense of community that people enjoy right now, having the access to the great open space, and the mix of housing options that are available here within Harriman City. The strengths and assets that people feel like the city has right now are the library and rec center across the way, the family-friendly neighborhoods again, and the playgrounds that are outside in those areas, beautiful parks, hiking access and trails, and then the splash pad, the great parks that are developed in all the neighborhoods, and just the connections to those trails in the open space. Some of those things that people would like to see in the future, just a different variety of amenities, and also looking at indoor play areas for some of the multifamily housing, as well as continuing to see a mix of density, but just being thoughtful about what that density is. And then dog parks were a big thing. I think Bryn said that was one of the top comments that she got the day she was manning the booths. So getting around, people would like to see the ability to use their bike, be on foot or on scooter, and have access that's safe and separated from traffic. An outdoor pool, even more parks, green spaces, not necessarily those programmed parks, but just green open spaces interspersed in the neighborhoods, and then looking at potentially an additional reservoir and indoor arena. As we discussed these things, just in our TAC committee, it was understanding the desires that people have, and then truth checking them with what the land uses are, the availability of land, and what the constraints on those land uses are. So that's part of that next step, is just linking these needs and desires with the reality of what Harriman has available. Did you have a comment, Mayor?
Just real quick. So when it comes back, I've heard you talk about this density mix and this mix of housing types. Was that couched from the residents as they think we have, just not enough one type of density over another, or is it they just want to see a mix of everything, or were they pretty clear about they didn't want to see something? Can you give me just a little more detail on that?
I would say the comments so far have been fairly general in nature, but as we go through the outreach process, we'll be dialing into more specifics on what that mix looks like. So I'm grateful. So just for the events that are upcoming, we're going to do 2 more of these community event outreaches where we have a table or a booth and some materials. We'll be at the Hula on Monday night, and then the movie in the park over at the Zebra, just the pre-movie activities they have between 6 and 7. Again, just trying to get kind of similar type of input on some of these values and visioning questions. We're going to have our first formal community workshop later in August on the 29th. We'll do it here at City Hall so that we have sort of the room and space and the resources to set it up to have a variety of activities as well as a presentation, really trying to engage the community, not only in discussions with us, the consultant team and city staff, but also with each other. The Community Builders Book Club, Michael Malloy, the city planner, had the first book club in mid-July where they read and then discussed the book Happy City. The one that they're doing for September is called Walkable City, and they're just hoping to continue sort of that discussion, reading books that talk about, what communities are, what they can aspire to be. So that's been a great and sort of unique outreach aspect, and appreciate that Michael's been leading that part. Our website for the project is active, so if you haven't checked it out, go to harrimannext.com, and looking for any input on other things that you might like to see on that website. Basically, it's a platform for keeping the community informed about what's going on with the general plan, summarizing some of the input that we've had, and then just letting them know about the events that are upcoming throughout the rest of the general plan process. Really quick, I just wanted to touch on the moderate income housing. As you probably know, the State Bill 34 from this last session has some new requirements that cities need to show that they are going to meet in their moderate income housing element. Those reports are due by December 1st, and we are just planning to sort of fast track that component of the general plan. We already have the analysis done by Zions Bank of Public Finance, and we'll be just working with the resources that both Wasatch Front Regional Council and Utah League of Cities and Towns has available. A lot of great resources just ready to go to support any data and analysis and information about exactly what the city needs to meet. Just really quickly, there is a menu of, I think, 20 to 24 items. Cities that are required to have a moderate income housing plan need to pick 3. If you're on a planned fixed guide transitway, you need to pick 4 menu items that show what your strategies are for meeting moderate income housing. Right now, based on the current regional long-range transportation plan, that fixed guideway is not on that long-range plan for Harriman. So for the moderate income housing plan right now, we'll just need to pick 3 menu items. We already reviewed past strategies that the city has supplied. It's showing how moderate income housing is being met, so we feel like we'll be able to make those requirements and get that report submitted pretty quickly and easily. So for the surveys, what we've been doing in the last couple of weeks is using the community liaisons and their Facebook pages to do sort of an informal survey that's more neighborhood-based, and it's designed to try to get feedback from different areas of Harriman, asking questions about their neighborhood so that we can understand not only what the common values are for the city as a whole, but what some of those differences are that people value or like about their neighborhoods, so that we can show both that contrast of here's things that people all think about Harriman in general, but neighborhood A might be a little bit different from neighborhood B or C, but they all collectively, have a say in what Harriman's future is like. For the formal citywide surveys, Tammy and Mike and I talked and decided that doing 2 smaller surveys was going to be the approach that we wanted to use. So the first one is going to focus on more of that vision and values and aspirations. We'll be doing that in August and early September, and then we'll do a second survey probably in October that is more focused on getting feedback on some of the draft plan goals and strategies. So the neighborhood questions, these are things, just telling us what you like about your neighborhood, what are the little things that make it special. We were really trying to focus on asking questions in a positive slant. Tell us what you like, tell us what you value, trying to keep a positive slant on the feedback that we're receiving. And just, again, kind of reiterating some of the things, what are the amenities that are easy to access, what's changed about your neighborhood, sometimes coming at the same type of question in different ways, just to see the variety of response that we get from people. For the first citywide survey, the questions that we've proposed fall under 3 different topics: housing, transportation, and then community, so talking about people and places. And I'm just going to go through these, and I've updated them just a little bit based on the feedback from our technical advisory committee. So the first ones are under the housing component. And we want to ask, what type of home do you live in now? And then what type of home do you think you'll need to live in 10 years from now? Whether it's upsizing, downsizing, just a different type of setting, and then finding out if that type of home is available in Harriman now. So basically, if you feel like you're going to need a change in housing, do you feel like Harriman has that available so that you'll be able to stay in the city in the future? For transportation, we're interested in knowing how people get to where they need to go, whether it's work or school or shopping. Are they using their cars? Are they biking, using an electric scooter or transit? And then following that up with, how would you like to get to your destinations in the future? Understanding if there's modal shifts that are desired, but right now they're just not feasible. From the safe streets component, some of that feedback that we heard earlier, we think it is based more on pedestrian and bicycle safety. And so we want to ask the question about how the streetscapes of Harriman can be improved to make people feel like they have a more enjoyable and safer experience if they're walking or biking. And then looking at that future of transit, when it arrives, whether it's express bus service or light rail, what would it take for you to use that transit system? So understanding if there's barriers to using transit that we can be a little bit more proactive about incorporating in the general plan. If it's within walking distance, if there's a park and ride, or if you can bike there, kiss and ride, trying to understand the range of ways that people might use the transit system and trying to reduce those barriers if we can. From a community standpoint, we've heard a lot about the Harriman feel, and we want to know a little bit more about what that means and what it means for different areas of Harriman. So that's going to help us do that sort of neighborhood level framework and understanding the future and the vision for each neighborhood as well as the city as a whole. That live, work, play neighborhood, understanding, what do you think that means for Harriman? Whether it's having everything within your neighborhood or it's having a neighborhood that's just a little bit closer to a job center, not just physically, but from a transportation standpoint. So how are you getting to where you need to go, and what needs to happen to make it more accessible? Some of the other things, we know that Harriman does a great job coordinating all these community events that we've been taking advantage of for doing outreach, but interested in hearing what other types of events that people might be interested in seeing happen. Whether it's a street fair or a food festival similar to Living Traditions that downtown Salt Lake City has, if it's just smaller block parties or a farmer's market, just kind of getting a sense of what activities that people might like to see in Harriman's future. And then another one is talking about your third place. So first place is your home, second place is either work or school. What is that third place where you go and hang out? It's not one of those first 2 places, but it's a community gathering space. What's available now? What might people like to see in the future? And then the last one is, sorry, there's like a thing covering my screen, so can get that out of the way. Okay, what different types of nodes would work in your neighborhood or in Harriman as a whole? And so when people hear node, they often go right to, it's like, oh, you mean a retail and a shopping center? But we want to know that people, you can feel like they have a community gathering space or a node in their neighborhood. It could be entertainment, it could just be parks and open space, or it could be shopping, or it could just be dining. So those are the questions that we have proposed for that first survey. Our goal is to keep it short so that people don't have survey fatigue. We're going to say that we think they can probably do it in 5 minutes or less. We've kept the questions right around 10 or 11 questions just to get through it pretty quickly. If there's anything in those questions that raises any red flags, or if you think there's something that you really have a burning desire for us to ask in that first question, that's the feedback that we wanted to get here tonight. That was it.
The only question that came to mind, and the mayor touched on a little bit, is the size of the lots, and maybe in the questionnaire, maybe being a little more, I guess, straightforward with lot sizes, and maybe to make sure that we don't get too broad a question to where it's answered and we're not sure exactly, are they meaning they want bigger lots, or are they meaning that I want more space, or what are they asking?
Okay, so just a little bit more specific in the choices. Great comment.
So on the one in the first group of questions, I think it was the second question, when you talk about, is that type of home available in Harriman? That to me seems is kind of a vague question. What do you mean by available? Available right now? Do you think it's going to be available in 10 years? Do you like what? Affordable. Is it available to me? Is that something that I can purchase? To me, that question just seems too vague to have a. What can we do to maybe clarify that down a little bit more so that if at current costs or whatever, do you think I don't know, it just seems too vague right there.
Yeah, and I think available is more like, is that housing type or lot size configuration part of the current development pattern that's either in place right now or is known to be built in the future? So the choices for that would correlate with the choices that are in that first question. What type of home do you live in now? So that we would try to have that compatibility. Yeah.
Survey is being distributed. Like, do you have an email list, or how are you?
So the city contracts with Y2 Analytics to do the formal survey, and so they have a whole system for making a statistically valid survey as far as what areas of the city, how many people they need to get to respond from each area, just to make sure that they're getting an equal and valid representation of Harriman City.
All right. Thank you, Susie, and thank you, FFKR, for all their hard work. If there's not any other questions, I think we'll move on to the next item on the agenda.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the discussion of the Game Point Development Agreement for property located at approximately 12120 Mountain View Corridor. And we'll have Gordon let us know about this.
All right, well, excited to, Bram had it. Was it emailed to you? Mike, do you know where the PowerPoint is? Bram disappeared. Okay, well, I'll start and then we'll just visualize. I'll do very good hand gestures. No. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so what we wanted to talk about, we have Aaron Osmond here, who's been working with us on a entertainment center over by the main street that we're constructing right now. And this is a piece of ground that the city had that we're selling to them for this specific purpose. But in doing this, we're going to be creating a development agreement. And so one of the things the Planning Commission has asked us to do, and the City Council, is to make sure that the Planning Commission understands these development agreements as they go through. This one will be particularly important because it will include an exhibit that will have the site plan and the elevations and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to have John Brems go through the development agreement, and then we're going to have Aaron and his architects kind of go through the site plan, the function, what's going to be happening in terms of the functions inside the building and outside. And so it should be really great. We've had a lot of great responses from the public, and so we're very excited about this project. So we lost John Brems too.
Do we want to have them go?
That was just when he.
Here comes John's coming.
When you heard him, when he heard you say his name, he laughed.
He was like, I'm gone.
I think they need some help
I think he was looking for the PowerPoint.
Okay, John, you're up.
So advance it just space bar.
Yep. I think we saw this last time. There you go.
Okay, this is the initial presentation of the Game Point Development Agreement. So to give you some background, this is the property that Game Point is in the process of purchasing. It's into 2 parcels, it's about 6 acres. Didn't bring mine. So this is Harriman Main Street that's being constructed right now, way down here. This is Miller Crossing. It's in the Auto Mall area. So purchase agreement, refresher to remind you of the deal. So the purchase price for the property was 1.6 million some odd. Uh-oh. What happened to me, Bryn? It went backwards. Okay, well,
Yeah, you had it.
okay.
Hit the space bar.
Space bar, again.
Space bar again. There you go.
No touchy. Uh-oh.
It's an automatic, so just don't touch it.
Okay. Did you get it? Any questions on the deal?
Not like we're trying to move that along.
Thanks, guys.
It was only a slide that was like that.
So,
To hurry him along, is that what that was?
so it was purchased part cash, part note. There were some conditions, specific conditions. Yeah, I wish I could go back because they're important conditions. Okay, see how long this stays up. So the conditions is that a subdivision plat be recorded. That plat is prepared. It's waiting for approval of the development and the participation agreement, which are also conditions for this purchase agreement. Condition to rezone the property. The property was rezoned in June with zoning conditions. The development agreement has been prepared, waiting for review and approval. That's what we're going to discuss tonight. There's also a participation agreement. The initial draft has been prepared, waiting for review and approval. And then there's an option to repurchase the property if it's not developed into this family entertainment area within 2 years for the original purchase price or the original sale price. So that's a refresher on the purchase agreement. Any questions? Okay, see what happens now. Okay, so far so good. The development agreement. So there'll be an exhibit that has the design guidelines, design criteria. These will basically be Bryn and Mike, the pretty pictures of what it looks like. What are we going to have? Those will be in exhibits. I'm not going to talk about those. They'll be talked about by Bryn. So in the development agreement, there's a vested right to develop a food establishment on Lot 1, if you remember the lot configuration, and a family entertainment center on Lot 2. That vesting interest will expire if the building permit is not obtained by 2 years from the date of closing. So there's a fuse. The developer, as part of the purchase agreement, remember he paid $100,000 for a Miller Boulevard acquisition fee. So he's going to get reimbursed that $100,000 from two parts, from two buckets, so to speak. From the transportation impact fee reimbursement agreement, which is an exhibit or an attachment to the development agreement, basically says impact fees collected from your area, you'll get back. And this is a capital facility road, so it's subject to impact fees. And then a participation agreement. And that is 50% of the point of sale TIF from the project will be paid to him, so is aggregating not more than $100,000. So he gets two buckets, impact fee reimbursement, sales tax reimbursement. This participation agreement comes in two parts. One is an agreement between the city and our RDA, and then a participation agreement from the RDA to the developer. Reimbursement agreements from the city to the developer. Developer will have the right but not the obligation to construct Miller Crossing, and if he constructs it, we'll arrange for a reimbursement for him over some period of time. City will construct Main Street by December 31, 2019. It's under construction right now. I think it should be done by December 31. Developer will be responsible for installation of street amenities on Auto Mall Drive, Miller Crossing, and Main Street without reimbursement. These are project improvements. These are park strip, lights, irrigation, grass in the park strip, or something else. We'll see. The development agreement also provides a non-binding estimate of the impact fees. They were quite concerned about the impact fees, but unless they tell us exactly what they're going to build, we can't tell them exactly what the impact fees are. So we put an estimate in the development agreement. There's a reservation of various legislative powers. You've seen that before. If there's a global change in our ordinances, they're applicable, change in ASTO standards, that type of thing. Building permit rules, et cetera. And then we have the no monetary damage provision. So if there's a breach, we don't get sued for millions. We just get sued for a specific performance. That's all I've got. Any questions?
Before you go on, in regards to the clause regarding the building permit needs to be within 2 years, that means that if they obtain a building permit within 2 years, that is now vested perpetually. Is that correct?
Yes. So it'll cost them to get a building permit. So we figure if they get a building permit, they're really going to build. But they only will get sales tax from their area.
Okay. So we don't need there's no need for provision, in your opinion, that says it needs to be completed, the building needs to be completed or anything with any additional time. I just don't want to see a building permit pulled just to preserve that right and then nothing ever happened.
We could do that. We give them a couple years to build, for example.
I don't have a problem with that.
He's shaking his head, so we'll put something in there.
Yes, I think so.
Then thank you.
Our intent is to build as soon as possible, but I understand the purpose and right of this property, why you guys purchased it in the first place, and want to maximize its use.
Awesome. Thank you. That was my only concern.
Okay. Anything else? Now, timing, this is going to come before the Planning Commission tomorrow for your initial look-see, give directions to staff to come back with improvements, changes in the design guidelines. That's your only meeting in August, so it comes back to you again in September for approval. And it'll be on for the approval or look-see by the city council on the 14th, August 14.
Yeah, so
You'll have the agreement by then to look at, this is 30, 50,000 foot view. You'll have more specifics in the actual development agreement by then.
Yeah, so to be specific, you will see this, the full development agreement on your 14th meeting, but you won't be voting on this till after the planning commission reviews and approves the site plan and the elevations and the landscaping, maybe without grass and park strip. Once the planning commission does that, this will all get married together at the city council sometime after you approve it, and then they'll approve the development agreement with those attachments after they've gone through the planning commission. So I want the planning commission to see their role in this whole thing, understand what's in the development agreement and how that affects you. So what we wanted to do tonight was not have a planning commission review of the site plan, that's tomorrow night, but what we wanted to do is have the city council and the planning commission take a look at what's going on, certainly give the developers some feedback, and then they will hear a more scrutinized discussion tomorrow night at the planning commission, and then in September, the planning commission or the developer will have a chance to address all those concerns, and in the meantime, the city council will be working through the development agreement to finish that up. So we'll go ahead and get out of this. Okay. We'll get that. All right.
Thanks for your help. Well, first of all, my name is Aaron Osmond. I represent Game Point Attractions Company that is bringing this entertainment option to Harriman, and the investors that are doing this with us. We're very proud of the work that's gone into this to this point. It represents roughly 5 years of planning and research, multiple feasibility studies, and a lot of creativity and effort to get to this point, and frankly, great participation from the city staff. They have really helped us to figure out the right location and how to maximize this opportunity for the benefit of the community. What I wanted to accomplish tonight with my presentation was to give an opportunity to the Planning Commission, who have not seen the concept really explained, and a sense for what this entertainment facility is really intended to bring to the community from an offering perspective. And then we want to show you our site plan in a little more detail and talk about our proposed elevations, some of the iterations that we've been through to this point. This is not our first attempt to show an elevation to the city, but we feel like we've made some really good progress, and we'd like to start showcasing that with you now on what the look and feel of the building will be from the outside, from a community view perspective. So the first thing I want to just do is talk with you about what is Game Point. What are we trying to accomplish with this facility? Our community on the southwest side of Salt Lake County really lacks entertainment options, and it's not just Harriman. It's this entire southwest side area. It's been that way for a long time, and there really is no obvious end in sight. And so as we looked at that, the combination for need for quality food, dining options, the need for true entertainment options other than going to the district for a movie, we wanted to create a place that would be attractive, fun, and engaging for families, community groups, and corporate events. Now, we wanted to be super careful to not just replicate a Boondocks in a birthday party facility. We wanted to create a place where it was professional, where there was a corporate feel to it, a level of professionalism where companies would want to send their teams to go do team building activities and have receptions and dinners, a place where community members would want to hold receptions and have, wedding fests and different activities in a venue that was clean and fun and engaging and open and spacious with lots of different amenities to choose from, not just one or two. Now, to do that, it's expensive, and so we're having to do this in a very methodical and planned and researched way. We've done some real work to understand what what are the latest and greatest attractions, what kind of combination of attractions will really be exciting to a community like ours in Harriman. And that was the intent behind Game Point. So this facility will be a 46,000 square foot facility. Inside it will house 24 lanes of bowling. That's big enough to attract league bowling to the southwest side of our community. It will house a very iconic, interactive ropes course ride. There's no other way to describe it. I'll show it to you in a minute, but it's not like the Boy Scout ropes courses you've all experienced. This is a fully harnessed, 4-story, 12-pole, 30-plus element ropes course challenge. Think of, some of the TV shows that you've seen and some of the competitive athletic games, and that's the kind of facility that will be, that attraction. In addition, we'll have a very engaging 4,000 square foot, 2-story laser tag arena. There will also be multiple escape rooms, and I'm sure all of you have done an escape room of some kind. They will be themed-based escape rooms where groups or families can go in and try to get out of this, puzzle. And it's just super fun and engaging. In addition to those attractions, we'll have the typical redemption arcade machines, the fun video games, and other types of fun kiddie activities. But there will also be virtual reality arenas. So people will be able to come in groups of 4, put on the virtual reality machines, play up to 200 or 300 different types of games while they're there at the facility. Very fun for teenagers, teenage groups, dances and dinner activities. It'll be a lot of fun to bring the community in and keep them in the facility for a long time. Now, I showed you guys a couple of pictures here. You can see right here, it's a look of the bowling structure. It's not going to be, your typical bowling environment. It'll be a very high-tech bowling setting with a lot of interactive video screen, colors and lights, the capacity to hold receptions and parties, private parties if we want to, dedicated to that side of the facility. You'll see here, this is the virtual arenas where people will be able to come in and play in groups of 4. Our laser tag concepts. This is a really good look about what kind of facility we'll have on the inside with the cement-based structure, a lot of open space above the ropes course up inside that you'll be able to see, and then access to these escape rooms as well, all internally. Now, I go through all that to show you that we have put a lot of planning in the combination of the attractions. These are latest and greatest technologies. This isn't the typical 1990s family event center. This isn't Chuck E. Cheese, with all respect to Chuck E. Cheese, our competitor out there. But this is about creating a truly professional event center, a fun place that will draw people from across the valley, not just in Harriman. Tax revenue in Harriman from people all over the valley coming to participate in this event location. So let me show you just a couple of concept pictures for the inside. Here's an example of a full-service restaurant structure in a similar type of facility down in Phoenix. So this is going to be a sit-down restaurant, full menu, not your typical chicken wings and pizza. It's going to be more like a Red Robin type quality of food and offering. A lot of choices, salads, sandwiches, pizzas as well, and other great food. But if you think Red Robin, that's going to be the quality of menu that we're building for this facility. We're calling it Element 24 is the name of the restaurant. It will be branded. It will be a restaurant where you can just go to have food at the restaurant as part of our facility. So that's kind of the conceptual look and feel. It will be a pizza bar, food service, sit down, waitress comes to serve you. You'll see and have access to all the entertainment components there, but you'll feel like you can sit down and have a really nice dinner as well with your spouse or significant other. Here's an example of what the bowling alley will look like in a little bit more detail. This is the latest and greatest technology again. Brunswick is our primary provider for our bowling structure. It's a very high-tech, automated bowling, full-pin bowling solution, 24 lanes. Again, our goal is to capture league bowling, which brings a lot of revenue to the facility, which means more taxable revenue for us both. And then this piece is the part that I think is the coolest personally. I get super excited about it, so apologize if I get a little overzealous about this, but let me just show this to you. This is the ropes course. This here is 4 full stories, 48 feet in height, causing our building height to be a little bit higher in this one section. You'll see that on the elevations that we're going to show you later. Down here is a little kiddie area where they have their own zip line and their own little elements for kids ages 3 to 6. Super fun. Over here are 3 separate climbing walls, and all of this structure is what they call a harness-based rope structure. Everybody is fully harnessed, and they go on these zip lines. Here's a zip line from level 2 down to level 4 down to level 3. Here's a 180-degree zip line from level 3 to level 2. It's a ride. It's a very expensive piece of equipment, but the idea here is to create so much interest. It's just, people are going to want to come and see this from all over the valley because there's nothing like it anywhere else in Utah. It will be an iconic attraction element. And the way that we've designed our, I would call it the elevation around this piece, is to really call attention to that, especially at night. This is a glow-in-the-dark structure. We'll have a lot of windows and light that will be shining through. People will be able to see inside from over by Mountain View Corridor as well as Harriman Highway. And it will be an advertisement in and of itself to come to this facility. Super cool. As you can tell, I really like it. The last thing I want to show you is an outdoor element too. We want this to be a fun reception area for corporate events. Next to our restaurant, there will be a patio area. We'll show you that on the site plan. But the concept here is corporate events, community events, high school parties and dances, all sorts of activities that would draw crowds to our facility. And be able to put them outside under a great pergola-type structure that would look very nice and inviting. Also, near this area will be a splash pad area for kids with seating and with these little covered areas for parents, and especially for moms that want to come during the day and let their kids go play and go on the ropes course or whatever and just have fun during the daytime when they've got nothing else to do. So it's going to be a really fun area. And then also outside, you'll see that we have a full 18-hole outdoor miniature golf facility that will be themed around some Utah concepts to really make it fun and draw in the Valley of Utah and Harriman as the center of this community offering. So I'm going to stop selling now and just tell you that we are super committed to this project. It is a multi-million-dollar investment that I and other investors are putting our own resources in to bring this attraction center to Harriman. We're very excited about it, very methodical and planned about it. We've done some deep research to validate that now is the time that we're ready in Harriman for this offering. Now, we also know that we need to blend in, that we need to create a look and feel of the offering of the building itself that will be attractive to residents, that they won't look at that as an eyesore or some boring building, that's just a big square. We're trying to be creative and also manage cost. We want to start showing you some of our concepts and give you a sense for what's coming. And I only want to caveat it with that we've spent time with Michael, we've spent time with the economic development team under Gordon, we've iterated back and forth on what's necessary. We understand the flexibility that's in the commercial code today. And we know that we need to come up with something that's a design recommendation specification that we can all buy into. Us on the cost side and you on the aesthetic and community buy-in and meeting the standards that you expect for a commercial structure of this size. That's what we want to do today. We want to start showing you some of that. What I quickly want to do is just reinforce the site plan, and then I'm going to invite Josh from Silver Peak, the engineering company, to come up. We also have our developer partner here. Tyler's here representing One West Construction, in case you have questions about the construction. But we want you to be able to ask any question about what we're thinking. But let me just first show you and point out a couple points on the site plan. Again, this is facing kind of a northwest. The front of the building is here. This area right here will be the ropes course section. And then this is the restaurant on this side. You see this is the reception area, splash pad area, garden seating out here. And then up here is the golf course area. Down this side will be the 24 lanes of bowling. Then you'll have inside the laser tag and the escape rooms and all of the arcade infrastructure, et cetera, on the inside. Up in this area, we're planning a future retail food building, as was mentioned under the development agreement. The intent there is to do something like a swig or a drink type, piece that would be complementary but not competitive to our restaurant offering inside of our facility. That's gonna come down the road. We're looking maybe a year after we complete this project, but we wanted you to know now. That's why we felt it was perfectly fine to accept the design or the function restriction under the development agreement, because we're totally bought into that as well. And with that, what I'd like to do now is invite Josh to come up, who is from Silver Peak Engineering, talk about our elevation ideas and some of the construction and building materials mix and our recommendations around what we'd like to do from a percentage specification requirements as well. Josh?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do you press the space bar to switch the? Okay. First of all, thank you, Aaron. I think Aaron did a great job discussing the site plan. We'll talk about the elevations in a minute, but while we are on the site plan, I think you brought up pretty much everything that that we would talk about. On the other than the parking and things that there are not. We've discussed some specific, but also non-specific requirements with the city with regard to parking. This is the second iteration of the site plan. The first iteration had about 60 less parking stalls. Realize that we want to draw as many people into this facility as we possibly can with as much parking as we possibly can get, while still maintaining, the facility and all of the features and attractions that we can get there, both inside and outside, with the miniature golf and the outdoor patio area, the splash pad, and things like that. And so we think we're pretty close to dialed. There may be another iteration or two as we go through and kind of work that out. I believe that one of the items that we've discussed preliminary with the city is making the parking requirements part of the development agreement in lieu of a parking study, but I believe that's still being discussed. The city's ordinance requires a parking study be done for this type of a development. That study has not been done yet. It's kind of early in the stages, and so we'll work with the staff to do whatever they decide we need to do as far as that goes. And so right now there are 250 parking stalls in the facility between the two shared buildings. We've got one building that's 46,000 square feet, and the other building is how big, Aaron? 10. So a total of 56,000 square feet of restaurant, combined entertainment area. So before we move to the elevations, are there questions about the site plan that you'd like to ask?
What is the road that comes down that says future? I think it says future public street. Why is there a shortcut connection between the two roads?
Why is there a shortcut connection?
Yeah.
We thought that a fire lane would probably be required.
That's what it's for, a fire lane?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I
Yep.
understand fire lanes. It just seems like a direct shortcut through that whole area. So that's what I was.
It kind of is.
I'll bring up tomorrow.
I appreciate that. I mean, and I understand kind of where you're going with that. Obviously, you want to prohibit, traffic movements that shortcut things. We were kind of thinking. We were mostly thinking about space and not having a fire truck turnaround. Obviously, those are things that are on the table. Also, that it's a space where we are hoping to get some additional parking for people that may not be able to park in the front because it's full.
Could be some egress controls we could put on it, but I see your point though, that it could be used.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your max occupancy on it?
The max occupant load on the building.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's been calculated.
Well, I was just wondering because that's how I'm calculating the parking need.
Yeah. We'll look into that. I know that we've been mostly focused on the elevations and things like that, and the design aspect. There will be, and so maybe tomorrow morning I can look into that really quick. But the short answer is I don't know right now. Yeah.
Focus, got it.
Yeah. Other questions on the site? Okay. So on the elevations, we wanted the building to be something that that is interesting, pleasing to look at, draws people in, is a destination where they can come and have a lot of fun. We want it to be attractive. We want it to be something that that when you drive by or you walk by, it's something that you can look at and go, yeah, that's a pretty building. We have been discussing with the city different architectural elements, exterior facade. There in this area, it's my understanding that there and for this size of building, there are not specific requirements as far as architectural elements as there are in other areas or with smaller buildings. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. And so we've been talking with the city about coming up with some design guidelines for this building. They asked that we propose some design guidelines. We offered to kind of start with a building elevation, which we gave to the city. They gave us some preliminary comments, and we made some modifications, and this is the second version that we've come up with. In other areas, they've talked about a percentage of stone or masonry. On this particular building, we're looking at possibly doing the building out of a combination of precast concrete or concrete tilt-up, as well as maybe some masonry elements. And then the 50 or 55-foot tall elevation that will have the ropes course in it will probably be a steel structure with some kind of veneer on it. And we're still discussing what that veneer might be. There's some metal paneling that's kind of multicolored that we think looks really interesting. And then we've talked about some kind of a composite wood type veneer as well. And so I know that those requirements are kind of in flux and being reviewed by the city. And Michael, is that something that we're going to have the Planning Commission comment on tomorrow? Okay, that sounds good. I don't know that I need to talk very much more about that. And we've got some other elevations here. This is the side where the restaurant will be. Just wanted to have an interesting entrance with a little bit of an outdoor area with a pergola, indoor and outdoor seating type area. You can kind of see we've tried to put a lot of glass in the area where the ropes course is, so that you can see through the windows during the day and during the night with the glow in the dark stuff, so that people can kind of see what's going on in there. Maybe attract some interest into the building. One of the things that we talked about with the city, and this was not my idea or our Silver Peak's idea, but somebody suggested that maybe some murals be used as part of the building facade. And it was discussed that those murals could be maybe painted so that you can see them during the day, but also another effect of doing some digital murals that are cast on the wall at night through projectors and things like that. And so this is not what we've shown there is not necessarily what may be on there, because the murals will probably be done by an artist, and you know, we'll utilize their creativity. And so this is just kind of a placeholder for what they may look like. We thought that might be kind of fun, especially on the long straight walls. We've got some building articulation in the front, but on two of the sides we've got long straight walls because we have bowling alleys and things on the inside of the building, and we want to make as efficient use of that space as we possibly can to maximize the capacity of the gaming and things like that. And so we thought of the murals as something to make the building interesting. This is the, she's called it the rear elevation. This is the south elevation of the building. Again, some murals, and that would be the tilt up with some concrete reveal, a little bit of two-tone paint and things like that to kind of just break up that long straight wall. I think we've got a few more pictures of this, but are there questions?
Is there a place to put a back entrance?
I'm sure we'll have to have some, at least some egress on the back. I don't know that we are planning an entrance on the back because most of the parking is in the front, although there is some parking in the back, and it's worth the discussion. Yeah.
We do employee parking in the back. So
Yeah.
we keep that.
I think with, and I'm not 100% sure how you are going to, how are you going to have people come in and have them check in or log in, but it seems to be that it would be wise to have that in one location rather than,
I mean, from a customer flow perspective, in most of these facilities, you have a main entrance where you come in and buy your ticketing. There's multiple exits, obviously, in the building, but not intended to be entrances as well, to control access to the attractions. But we can certainly look at another entrance and for safety purposes, obviously. But I like the employee entrance component of it as well.
Is there a separate entrance to the restaurant?
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Can you go back to the parking?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I pressed the button way too many times. Sorry, I didn't. I thought I was going fast, but I wasn't. There we go.
My feedback would just be maybe think about some kind of pathway from the back end of the parking to the front, so it's safe for families to walk.
Maybe around both sides, and definitely, yeah. I agree.
Looks terrible. I don't think we can have it here. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what we usually expect from the planning commission.
So, talk to me more about this digital mural thing idea. I'm not sure I'm 100% on board with that.
Well, it was an idea that's based off of, have you guys been to the Topgolf? At night, they have digital elements that are projected onto the building. And the idea there was is to create, something that would be inviting, artistically interesting, that someone would want to come take a picture next to. But it wasn't meant to be an advertisement or a billboard.
Okay, that's my biggest. I think that's my biggest concern. Is
We don't want that either. We want this to be a very professional, corporate-like setting, and that will not work for us either.
All right, guys. We appreciate your time. Are there any other questions from the planning commission or council?
Look forward to your feedback for later, and if you have any questions, I'll take them on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can see why I was really excited about this. This will be great. I think our community needs some things like this. So that's one of the reasons we've been pushing this along for so long. So we've got another great project coming up now. So we have a great project.
Thank you, Gordon. So Bryn, are you setting up the Academy Village or no?
He's been waiting long enough.
There we go. So the next item on the agenda is a proposed Academy Village commercial development located at 14752 South Academy Parkway. So over by Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, I just want to give John a little bit of disclaimer. He sent us these slides, and then we put them in a random order. So this is an opportunity to see how quickly he adjusts to how we put the slides into this presentation. So it's always good to do fun things with John.
Yeah, he's not telling the full story. The full story is I got the confirmation I was on the agenda about an hour before we threw all this together. So don't mind if it's kind of sporadically thrown together, but I think the message and the point will be very clear. And no, I didn't hire Bryn to actually build my PowerPoint, but I probably should have. So anyways, my name's John Lindsley. I'm with Wasatch Commercial Management. Some of you may have known me or we've met in the past on some of our projects. We're here again to discuss our Academy Village project, which is adjacent to our Real Salt Lake project that we had built. And we continue to build the Wasatch South Hills development, which is roughly a couple of thousand units of single-family residential type product and some medium and high density as well in this area. So in a nutshell, we're kind of building a small mini city out there. So I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with it. Today's point ultimately is to just continue the discussion with Planning Commission and City Council so you guys are aware of our progress. We make changes to the development as we continue our research. And as you know, there's really no reason. It's really because we're just developers. We change things all the time, right? So it's always for a good reason, but it's a much longer story than you're welcome to ask. But this is the location. This is the highlighted area is two roughly 25-acre parcels. They split. Real Vista Drive cuts down the center of it, and you turn on Academy Parkway, and you're right there at the RSL Training Academy. We recognize the need in this area to develop this region with a well-balanced proportion of not only rooftops for homes, but also commercial. We recognize the need for Harriman City to help with property taxes by generating tax increment. And we have a CDA in this area that was originated long before we purchased this property, which was designed around this theory that we want to condense this to a strong commercial property and a unique use. So for us, the use ended up being sports themed. Obviously, we have much invested in the training facility, but as we continue to expand with the operations of the training facility, we also are very aware of our need to keep some of our patrons in Harriman City as opposed to going elsewhere. And so as a good partner, we're trying to figure that solution out. So with that said, we're going to continue to look at these two parcels. This on the right and the left will essentially be pod 35 and pod 39. So if you hear us refer to that, pod 39 is the one that's a little bit closer to the training facility, which for us essentially is phase one. We're going to try to develop this 25-acre first and then go to the next. But like I said before, with developers, we change all the time. So sometimes leases drive that. For example, if we find a grocer that's ready to come in, we may expand on pod 35 to help accommodate that because we understand the attraction there. One of the things that will be presented with Bryn's assistance, and obviously Mike's as well too, would be a rezone. By default, our development agreement allows us to incorporate 4.5 units per acre on any acquisition of land. And so by acquiring this 50, we end up with a little over 200 units. And in talking with the city in the past, we're identifying the need to try to keep this a sports mixed use zone that we created intentionally, and to try to attract other sports enterprises that can lease operations from us for our field use. And I think everyone's familiar with the other outfits that have been entertaining the idea of locating themselves here for the reason of being able to lease space from our training facility. We're trying to help accommodate that in not only just the training facility itself, but also in a housing need as well too. So what we're leaning towards is creating these two residential pieces that we would rezone as residential, and that reflects as the brown area there. And I'll get into a better plan that can kind of show you this layout. But one that's in pod 39, closest to the training facility, is more of a sports themed. We're going to look at a product that would be 1 bedroom and or studio. That seems that it would be sufficient for team lodging is our target there. On the other side, pod 35 in the brown area, this is close to Salt Lake Community College, and we have discussions with them to entertain the idea of student housing. So with that said, we know that up front we need to work on the zoning of that to be able to incorporate the units that we would inherit with this property. So Here is an overall site plan. This combines Phase 1, Phase 2, Pod 35, Pod 39 in a little bit more detail. Just to kind of run through at a high level, we have targeted a multi-layer of multiple uses. We have office, we have hotel, we have professional office, which would be specifically like sports therapy would be a great operation for us out here, and or dentistry, something that's more of a professional office. We have retail, we have restaurant, we have gas station, we have pharmacy, we have grocery. We kind of have quite a bit of everything, but we feel that this is going to be a good balance. We have a lot of partners in the industry. We've talked with a lot of people that are very interested in coming here. So as you see, we're kind of custom building what we feel that we can sense in the market that would be successful in this region and generate solid tax revenue for the city. The next slide zeroes in here a little bit closer to Pod 39, which once again is the Phase 1. And it's high level still, but we've been spending quite a bit of time trying to identify sizes and uses and capacity and parking and trying not to create a 25 acre where half of it is just asphalt. Doesn't benefit the city, doesn't benefit the developer, doesn't benefit everybody on down the road. You know, probably Jordan Valley because it doesn't water the asphalt, you know, just to kind of pick on him a little bit. But ultimately, you know, we figure that the size that we've laid this out is substantial, but we recognize that it's maximizing the potential of this parcel. So in the pointer, let's do this. This corner here, Lot 39O is our office building. We started out somewhere between 2 and 3. Mayor Watts wanted much larger story. We have been doing studies and we are trying to figure out what's the right balance. For us, it's a cost-driven thing, so concrete tilt-up is a very affordable product right now, which when I show you elevations later, you'll be able to see that it's a very attractive product. But this is leaning towards a 4-story building right now. We're trying to park this from a leasable standpoint. Based on our experience, we have about 4 to 6 million square feet of commercial office right now. And for us to be able to park this efficiently in the market, we want to be targeting around 6 stalls per 1,000 square feet. So that leads us to the parking structure here. Now, the parking structure will access from an upper level from the office, and it will access from the hotel here from a lower level with ramps 4-story. So ultimately, this parking structure right now, mathematically, by using the use of the hotel, the professional office, and the office, is about 820 some odd stalls right now. So it's a large structure. We plan on utilizing it for, I'm not sure if anyone's noticed, but we're very well endeavored with solar, and we want to produce solar on not only the office, the hotel, and this professional office, and possibly a few other standalone buildings that I'll go over. But we're going to utilize this top layer for covered on the top deck with solar panels as well too. We're going to house our solar components in places of here by using also the rooftops of these locations as well. We want to do like what we're doing in our apartment project down the street with Soleil, to try to become as efficient as we can by utilizing natural resources. Maybe not quite as efficient as Soleil. I'll probably put gas in this product, so that will be a different ballgame altogether. But with that said, this is the hotel lot here. We've got it sized appropriately to where we do have some asphalt, but they're going to be utilizing approximately 100 stalls within the parking structure as well. Overnight guests during wintertime would be able to take advantage of underground parking. A lot of benefits to that, but then you'll also supply some outdoor parking as well. This area here has been dedicated for rideshare, so your Uber, your Lyft ride services will all be able to have a designated parking stall and pickup area and drop-off area. This size has been accommodable towards also supplying parking to the RSL training facility down the street. That size and capacity allows us to use that during different times of the day, which will benefit, say, like the hotel and not the office, and vice versa. During game days, we'll be able to utilize that service to park it. So once again, that's another large feature to this. I know I'm going to kind of be bouncing all around, and if anybody has questions, throw them out. You're not going to interrupt me. You're not going to offend me. So here is the residential component. It's really just a placeholder right now. We haven't got the exact building specs laid out, but we do know that we want to utilize garages as part of our retention and step-down areas. So if you're familiar with this area, it drops 40-something feet in this small distance, so we have a lot of ground that we have to figure out how to accommodate. By using these garages, that allows us to double as retaining walls and provide some additional stalls for the tenants that'll be there, because some of these athletes probably come with lots of weights, right? So where do you put them? Put them in the garage. Here is restaurant. This color here is all restaurant. We feel that being close to the training facility would be an advantage. This is designed for your like fast casual type restaurants. Over here is restaurant, but this is more drive-through. You can see that we've accommodated the ability for drive-throughs there. This is retail. Retail is our yellow here. This is a gas station. We have partners that work with us within the RSL organization that are already very interested in this corner. It'll be essentially a pretty hot corner for them. So that'll be maintained as a restaurant, or sorry, as a gas station. Down here, we have a partner that is very interested in expanding their footprint with a bank as well there too. So that kind of covers everything within the Pod 39 footprint. There's some land vacation that we'll be working on in the future as well, and that's something that was just part of our purchase sale agreement that was abandoned, that we're going to try to expand, build retaining walls, and try to utilize as many square feet as we possibly can throughout the site for tax revenue base. We have a fire road here. We were accommodating the fire marshal's request to create an actual road as opposed to just asphalt, to be able to have ingress, egress for the neighbors here and their wonderful project they need secondary access for. Tongue in cheek, but open that up to any questions at that point maybe. I think I kind of just high-leveled our new product. Without questions, let me steer into maybe changes from previously discussed site plans versus this site plan. And I know that this is a little difficult because you can't see or feel the warmth of what we're trying to create. We have over 15% of landscape that will be in here, but we're going to be very landscape-wise. In fact, just as kind of an open thought, what I was listening to with our friends from Jordan Valley, we want to incorporate that into our design review guidelines within the South Hills program. We have a point system that we want the builders to be influenced to generate a point on that target. So if they can produce the water-wise program and follow that, we'll give them a point, and I see no reason why we wouldn't adopt that. But we would also be doing that for our own projects as well too. Planner's going to be drip. We're going to try to be very smart with our landscape. But the fill has changed because originally the theme was Spanish theme, and it was a slightly outlandish idea, and I think we knew that. And if any of you know my principal, there's sometimes some pretty outlandish ideas that get thrown around. Sometimes
All of his ideas.
not all. But this one was one that I had a hard time figuring out how we were going to solve for. And with discussions with city planners, we recognized that it might be, might not fit the elements. And so the theme has migrated to something that we can incorporate the area, which would be more of a mountain modern. So to think of something like a high-end Park City is going to be what the result of this theme is going to be. We're going to try to incorporate visual aesthetics to the Kennecott copper, the colorization. Mike Malloy had a great suggestion that the color that we have is not going anywhere behind us, right? It's a big pile of dirt that's got a certain tint to it, and we think that we're going to try to capture that. And we have a lot of retaining walls through here, so we're going to try to build these elements into it that not only blend with our surroundings but stick to the mountain theme, because that's really what I think Harriman's base is, and we want to try to help support that as well. The Spanish theme was really a soccer-driven thing, but when you talk to our consultants in the industry, they kind of were talking us out of it. So. anyways, we've thought about our trash enclosures. We've thought about our recycling program. We're going to offer a very stringent recycling program to our tenants. And probably one of the key things here to understand is we're not going anywhere in this area. We're going to manage this property, and we're not going to be able to sell any land because basically the way that we took down the land was through 1031, and so for us, we can't sell the land. We're looking at maintaining the land just like an HOA. So we're going to design our own guidelines, and we're going to follow them, and we're going to be very strict with them. Build to suits will be something that we're going to follow and build our own guidelines. Now, with that said, we know that between the master development agreement with Rosecrest and South Hills, the Wasatch master development agreement, neither really completed the guidelines for commercial, right, Bryn? And so we're going to work close with the city to design these as we go. The survivor will be the Wasatch South Hills. It makes sense for us, since we're going to be long-term in this area, to adopt that into our development agreement. But by utilizing the ordinances from 2008, but then also incorporating new ordinances, because we don't want to always hold the city hostage with, what happened in 08. We want this to be something we partner with you on and understand how to produce these guidelines that's beneficial for both the city and ourselves. Because, like I say, we're here long-term. So we have our own commercial management group, and this will be incorporated right away into managing this entire asset, both 25 acres within our own organization. So I'm trying to think if I've missed anything. Anybody got any questions? Brett's always got a good question coming out of somewhere. Nothing, Brett? Okay, great. Great, now's the time.
This property has the Rosecrest development agreement recorded on this property. He's not Rosecrest, he's Wasatch. And Wasatch has their own development agreement. So what we're going to do is we're going to be bringing to you an amendment to the Rosecrest development agreement that basically eliminates their development agreement, and then we're going to amend their development agreement to place in place there.
Just
so,
this area.
Yeah, so you'll see that coming to the city council, but we wanted the planning commission here, because we'll try to show it to you as well. But we wanted everybody to understand we're going to bring you lots of development agreements, but this is
So John, the only thought with it, I really like a lot of what it is. The only thought that I had, just because of another development in the city, is the residential 1 and 2. With that amount of parking around it and not having as much green space, it tends to have a little bit of a cold feel. So I'd be interested in what you're doing to take that away.
Yeah.
Because the other development within our city, and you have a bunch of athletes that are going to be in there. And I mean, I'm looking at it saying, why is the back parking lot not just a green space there for them, and figuring out a different way to design the parking. Granted, there's a lot of components in the whole development you guys just gave us. And so, well, my mind went there a little bit because of something else that I think we messed up as a city in a different development, where with the parking surrounding it, it had a very, very cold feel to it.
Yeah, and maybe I wasn't clear. That's really just a placeholder. We just took a couple buildings we built before and plopped them in there. There's no thought put to that whatsoever, other than just saying we know this is going to be our area for residential. We're not sure if it's going to be tuck under. We're not sure if, exactly the product, other than we know we want to lean towards a studio and 1 bedroom type of use. As far as the layout goes, almost zero thought has been put to that. It's just a plopped in placeholder. You'll see a much better product.
That's where my thoughts went, and obviously just to state them now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Zero thought's been put into that layout, and we will come with a much more thought through product for that residential. So this was just added because this is the parking breakdown. I don't know how much detail we want to get into that, but it breaks down the components of making sure that we're parking it sufficiently for all of the hotels, the restaurant, the office, everything combined. It's actually an extensive study to make sure we do it properly, and laying out and making sure that we maximize the space and not overkill it with too much asphalt. So we can get into that into much more detail in the future. But I did want to share with you some potential elevations of the building so you can kind of see what we're targeting for the office building. This is one option here as far as elevations. It's a little bit hard to see, and maybe it's my angle, but it just goes to show you that it's going to be tilt-up 4-story. We're going to try to get as much as we can, which, by the way, that's what you can do with a tilt-up is max is 4-story on that. I'm not aware of us doing anything 5 that's tilt-up. So here's another look of another building that's very similar. And the reason why I'm able to share with you multiple buildings is because we're currently building 6 of these buildings in a different city right now, and so we're taking advantage of being able to duplicate our plans. So we're just trying to pick which is the right one, but we know we're going to be about 133,000 square feet for that building, which we feel is going to be pretty good capacity. We want to target our friends down at the NSA. We want to target Camp Williams and some of the Lehigh tenants that are looking for something that's a little bit different in order to access that area. So here's some more elevations that you can look at as well. Let's see. The next one, I think this one probably represents pretty closely what we're looking at. So if you can imagine right there on Mountain View Corridor, this is what you'll see right there on that corner. And we have a little bit smaller building on Pod 35 that's on the other side of the other parking structure. They'll both be very similar. We'll try to blend them together. Aerbia is a good partner of ours. They've done some pretty good work for us. Few other looks, few other buildings, and I believe I'm on to somebody else's slide. This is where Bryn kicks in. Any other questions?
John,
Clint.
these plans, I really like the parking structure component of overall in there to helping condense that parking, utilize it for other things. One of the things that I think that can make an area feel, back to the comment, cold quicker than anything else is just the parking structure.
Sure.
Do you have plans of how to soften that and how to incorporate that into that theme bill that you have in there specific to the parking structure?
You know, parking structure is very difficult to warm up. You know, we try to make sure that there's good landscaping around the exterior on the lower levels. The inside is really going to be maximized for cost. This would be something that we're going to try to utilize our friends at the county and the transportation and the city to try to help facilitate the cost of this. And so we want to try to be as efficient and economical as possible. We have built some parking structures that incorporate retail elements to the bottom level. The back side of this parking structure is a retaining portion, and so that eliminates one side of the 3. The 2 other sides are access from the hotel and from the office, and so it really eliminates those 2. So now you have one front that could be incorporated into something of that nature. But when we look at the costs that increase the structure to be able to build out space and all of the different utilities that need to be provided to that, we haven't seen that balance make sense for us. But I think there's other ways of softening it up. And the top, like I say, from Mountain View Corridor will look like not just a parking structure with some sidewalls. It'll actually have like a roof, a drive-under roof, and then solar panels on top. And so, yeah, it is really hard to soften one up. But I'm open to suggestions. If you have something that we can look at, we'd definitely be open to it.
We haven't talked about this, but I was hoping that we could have a conversation about maybe doing some pervious skins or something kind of
Sure.
brings an artistic element to it.
Yep.
Still maintain security and light and access.
Yes.
But there's a number of things I think we can do to try and
Yeah.
create some visual interest within that structure.
We'd be very interested. Like downtown, we've put advertisements on ours. It's in a little bit different area, but we've done what we can to try to make it not look like just a solid parking structure. We've put, like downtown, it's a little bit higher per square foot, but we've been able to put like marble exterior on some of them, you know, and just change the elements a little bit. But absolutely, that's one of the reasons why we're here, is to try to understand what sort of things like this we can do and what options exist to not make it look like it's just a real rough concrete, you know, where you're still seeing the you know, all the sheathing on the outside, exterior 4x8 sheets. We're not going to leave it like that. So, yeah.
I appreciate Tim's question, because that's exactly one of my questions was. We support the parking structure. We know it's needed. In fact, we need parking today.
Yeah.
Events going on there.
Sure.
But a good model of that, I thought it did a very well job. And that's we need to remind what the Huntsman Center, the basketball center from the University of Utah, the parking structure across the street from that.
Oh.
Did a very good job of softening it, having it blended. You have to look hard to see it's a parking structure. They did a very good job of mitigating the noise issues come from the parking structure. But they also added an elevator park in that. Those who don't park blue, they probably have. But people that are red, they probably
Absolutely. We have EV chargers planned, and I can actually get Josh Roy up here, who's our sustainability guy, who's worked with us on Soleil and all of our other projects, but we do have EV chargers throughout this project that we're planning on implementing as well. But yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it's a cost balance. I think the one at the University of Utah has a metal shell to it. I don't know what they paid for that, but I can assume that it might be a little high, but there's definitely product that you can dress it up with that we'd be wanting to make it aesthetically as pleasing as possible.
I'm not sure what they put on the exterior of the one there at the new Hale Theater, they're right off I-15, but they definitely softened that one with.
Right.
Like I said, I don't know what the product is and what the
Sure.
price point is.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We're open to running numbers on all sorts of different product types and gaining input, because ultimately it's a cost that we're looking at hoping to share, and we want to make sure that everyone agrees with how we're going to spend that money. Yep. Anybody, anything else?
I was just going to mention one thing. We're working with them. I wanted to explain a little bit of the value of that parking structure. I've been a little bit critical of Lehigh and how their office building has developed out their park. They have a building, then a sea of parking in the asphalt world, and another building, another big pile of asphalt. So literally you have to drive from building to building, or any place if you want to go to a restaurant. And so a parking structure, if you go downtown and you think of the office buildings, literally you could walk from an office building to a restaurant, to another office, and that kind of thing. And the only way you can accommodate that is with a parking structure. And so we're right now trying to work with, however, you don't see that in Lehigh and other places because raw land is so much cheaper just to cover it with asphalt. And so we're looking at some public and private partnerships to get the parking structure funded. So there's issues associated with transit coming by in the future. We're looking at Salt Lake Community College needing the parking. RSL could definitely benefit from the parking, as well as the commercial, and just doing a better pattern in Salt Lake Valley. And we've seen the state get involved with parking structures. They're building one at the Delta Center and also up Cottonwood Canyon. So they're doing this now, and so we're going to put a very big effort to get some public interest in doing that. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to just fund it. And so I just wanted you to be aware of that. To make this work, we got to get that parking structure in there. Did you want to say?
Nope. And the only other thing with that, John, is do we have the paths planned from the parking structure for maybe other locations outside of just the hotel and the office, or is there no intentions of using that for any of the other stuff?
Oh, no, we want to open it up for public use. For, you know, it would be something we'd look at, you know, possibly generating revenue through. We can gate it with an attendant. Obviously, it serves the immediate purpose of the surrounding locations so that we meet our parking requirements. But there's off-peak, you know, times where the office at nighttime opens up all those stalls. We want to be able to use that for all of our public events.
Everything else.
Yep.
So is there, and I didn't look close enough, you probably already had something, but is there planned pathways to the different locations from the parking?
Yeah, you're correct. It's not on the site plan quite yet, but you will see something that shows that from the parking structure and from the hotel, we're going to have walkways that go straight down the street and then straight over to RSL. We tried to get it down the far south of the property, adjacent to the neighboring units, but it's so steep right there, we wouldn't be able to achieve ADA, and it just was a straight shot, straight downhill. So we're going to have to try to utilize the road, which we're engineering to maintain, that we can accomplish the ADA and so forth. But yes, we want there to be a very clear, wide walkway going down to the facilities.
Did I say promenade?
I'm sorry?
Did I say promenade?
Could? Yeah. Promenade. Help me understand.
Wide enough, wider with some streets and benches, some place you
Yeah.
can stroll.
Absolutely. And in fact, down the Real Vista Drive, we're working with the third party that's developing that roadway. We're having a hard time with that slope, achieving ADA, so we're going to figure out how to route that in through our property to have a little walkway so that you can kind of mingle and have a little sitting bench and strollers. And, you know, we see the stroller activity outside of here all the time. We know that it's a needed product. We want people to be able to meander through the property. and feel like that you can park at the parking lot, grab a coffee, and go down and do shopping. And, you know, we want that feel. I mean, we're not in competition with Center Cow down the street. I think we'd be missing our mark if we were trying to be, but we're trying to make this feel like a station park and that kind of an experience. That's, you know, we'll build this with amenities to where we have stopping stations and different ways that you can, you know, feel like you're spending a little bit of time at the location. The longer people spend there, obviously, the better the experience for everybody. So,
Thank you, John.
all right, thank you guys.
Next item is item 2.6, a discussion of the proposed planned community zone. I'm not sure who is in charge of this one.
Well, Steve, you're gonna come up and cover the slides right there.
We don't even have to use the slide, it's just
Oh.
one slide.
So we really just wanted to introduce the fact that staff has been working on developing a new zoning, the PC zone. It's a zone type that's been used in the county and a number of other communities. It's typically reserved for very large areas that are being master planned and rezoned. It's kind of like codifying a development agreement. In doing this initial research, and tomorrow night the Planning Commission is going to be looking at a proposed draft. We've also been contacted by a land use consultant who has suggested that they have seen a better zone called a community development zone that tends to have both more predictability and a clearer process than what we see in the PC zone in the county. So we're going to be exploring that as well. But again, this is going to be reserved for large large areas like 300, 400, 500 acre areas within the city. The community development zone that we just started to look at is in use, for example, in 500 acres in American Fork around their Frontliner station. And we're just learning about that one ourselves, but it looks a little more promising, I think, than the PC zone.
Is this usually with master development agreements? They sort of coincide?
Yeah, it's really trying to bring, what happens with our master development agreements is they always supersede the base zone. And they don't really work very well in tandem oftentimes. I think some of these other zoning tools try to bring the underlying zone more in line with the development agreement essentially.
Is the thoughts also with expiration of master development agreements, and granted that's way down the road, it keeps more or less the concept of what that master development agreement, so it prevents like a zone that's underneath allowing them to drastically change what the area was, or I guess I'm trying to understand more of the thought.
Well, whenever you're introducing like a PC zone or a master development agreement, yeah, you're going to be rezoning, right? You're probably, in our case, going from some type of an agricultural zone, which is really a holding zone, or something else, another type of zoning tool. But yeah, it's a tool that's been used quite well in other cities, like in Lehigh, Saratoga Springs, where they have, I think, been able to get a little bit more progressive or kind of a better finished product. I think that's what we've been frustrated with, is with the MDAs, there tends to be some kind of holes in the agreement, and in the end, we've kind of haven't quite received the fruit that we all thought we were going to get through the MDA. So we're just trying to see if there's a better tool for any future type of projects that we might have that would warrant that type of zoning regulation.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions?
On those, how do they work? I mean, we can go more into tomorrow, but does it create specific zoning within that zone? Or, I mean, I worry about stuff being moved around within, does that make sense? I mean, if a developer comes and says, I'm gonna put commercial here, but it's not, because you can't put commercial in anything.
It's a balance between predictability and flexibility within the marketplace.
Right.
I think you may have watched the daybreak presentation to the Suffolk County Council, and that was what they were talking about, because these developments, of course, take 10, 20, 30 years to build out, and what you would envision at the beginning, maybe now it's, you know, in the market 15 years into the agreement. So I think it's a smarter tool that just protects both parties. It helps us get, I think, a better product in the end.
Is this in place of MDAs or no?
I'm not sure. It seems like it's still in connection. I think it minimizes what is in the NDA though. I think it puts more of that kind of language. It relies more on the actual underlying zone for the design criteria. Seems like.
Yeah, I think a lot of what it does, especially for the larger properties, is I was kind of explaining it. It's like one more level for a PUD. So instead of like a preliminary and then final HPOD, it's very for a large property, right? They can do kind of a generic plan and then they do the next level. You know what I mean? So it allows you to review it multiple times.
Yeah.
At the broader level, and then more specific down to the street level, and then the neighborhood and the subdivision. So I think it does give them the flexibility to kind of fine tune it as they go through the phases.
Anything will be tied to a certain amount of commercial. That's I mean, we've had developments around here that come in with promises of big commercial and they don't. That'd be my concern with this. Reading a little bit about it, I did, but I could have misunderstood it too. If we want some commercial aspects in it, I don't know, is it better to zone it commercial or?
Large project, you're gonna want, the uses will all be defined as part of the approval. So there's almost really the way we could look at it, because the uses would be defined as part of the approval. So it's not like there's a list of uses in the zone, it's really gonna be tailored for that property. And then they would come in and say, yeah, commercial here. But again, the first level would probably be a little more generic. Kind of, red here, yellow here, it'd be very.
So it might give us more flexibility to
as
not
the
approve
market,
things as they come through.
They kind of.
So they would come to us
Certainly
with.
put something like at least this much commercial, you know what I mean, some criteria.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway. So this is gonna
It's a
be.
work in progress.
Yeah.
Michael, I've got a question. So does this allow us, as we're going through, and and maybe I'm just trying to make sure I get this wrapped around my head correctly. So if we were to change something in the zoning code that, that was part of this alternate part of this master development agreement, since it's our code, once we change it, would then that developer be required to follow the new guidelines?
And are you talking about anybody who has an existing development agreement?
Well, if they got a development agreement after we put this into place, and they got a development agreement, they were approved under this zoning, and then we updated the zoning to require something new, certain street widths or whatever it was, would they then be bound to that new code?
If we structure the agreement to require that, then yes. And we've actually, on the newer, the Mountain Ridge project, we've actually been introducing some of those concepts so that they're not just squarely vested in the code that exists today, that there are certain elements that we are going to agree to, that they're going to comply with the current code at the time of development, whenever that happens along their timeline.
That phase comes through, it's vested once that phase begins.
Yeah.
Because, for example, parking, I think would be a good example of that. I know we've updated our parking and we've updated open space a couple of times, but we still have these development agreements from 2006 that are on the old system. We don't get to do anything with the change. So would this allow us as a mechanism to say?
It could.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be a benefit.
New ones, not on the current.
Obviously.
All right. All right, last item on the agenda, Parks and Trails update by Wendy.
Last and best.
Best. That's what I meant to say, best.
Because it's last. Y'all are looking awfully exhausted.
We've still got 40 minutes, Wendy.
We'll be back tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow. It's more fun and exciting.
Does anybody need to stretch? Y'all doing okay?
Plow through.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll be quick. Someone in this room has done this person to me.
The question is who?
You don't know what I'm saying.
Okay, so we've got a lot of fun projects going on. Some are really exciting, and our residents are very excited about the things that we have happening. I don't know how many of you were able to our park grand opening last night or saw it on Facebook. We had a tremendous response to our event thanks to the communications for pushing it out so well. We did have about 1,800 water pops and ran out. And kids were running around having a great time with the scavenger hunt. It's a really fun park. If you haven't been there, I would encourage you to go. We do still have, we're gonna get to ours in a minute. Let's get started with the opening instructions. No, go back. Sorry. So the Rose Creek Trail, the Oak Hollow development has installed 2 bridges in this area at the Rose Creek Drainage. If you haven't been there with the bridges, they're phenomenal and they look great in the setting. So we're really excited to get this project going from our side. The developer's part is doing the bridges and our part is doing the asphalt trail piece. We did go out to bid. We have awarded the bid to Acme Construction. And we should start, did you just sign those notices to proceed? I think you did, yeah. So we'll start going on that. Anticipated completion for Rose Creek is in April of next year. And it will connect the Cove neighborhoods with Butterfield Park, which is amazing for those areas. Any questions on Rose Creek? Midas Creek East and West, it's the same situation. We put it out to bid. We actually have 2 different contractors on this one. Acme will be handling the east project because there are 3 bridges associated with that section. Black Forest will be doing the west section. Both will be completed again by April of 2020. And again, residents are really excited about this, especially our neighborhoods in Copper Creek that are excited to have that access under Mountain View corridor. And the bridges will look the same throughout. So the ones that you saw for Rose Creek will be the same.
Very nice, man.
Yeah, they look great. It was so exciting to see them. And the scrub oak, they look so good. So this kind of tells you the different sections. Section 1, where you see the bridges down there, will be done by Acme. And section 3 will be done by Black Forest. Same time schedule, so we'll get those started in the next couple months. Any questions on those? Primitive trails, our primitive trails were delayed because of the weather, so we had hoped to get a lot of these done in the spring and early summer, but it just didn't happen. But our trail builder was pushed behind on his other projects, and so it's been pushed to the fall. So you'll start seeing some of this happening in August, September, when he's able to finish all of his other projects. Juniper Canyon, I've talked to you all about Juniper Canyon a little bit. We've gone through a phasing plan with our designer, who's G Brown Design, and we're hoping for phase 1 in the next few years. We currently don't have it budgeted, but I did apply for a grant. It's around the county's TRCC grant. We'll hear back on that hopefully later this fall. Just phase 1 alone is about a $2.9 million project. I don't want to scare you. It will be fine. It will be fine. We'll find
forest, and kids were having a blast out there last night.
The
Learning
Yeti's
how to
fantastic.
slackline and
The
hanging
Yeti
out in
on the
hammocks.
totem pole, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we're really excited. It's generated a lot of really great feedback on social media. It's gotten a really good response, so we're really excited about this part. There are some site furnishings that still need to be placed. The bathrooms are not yet done. They'll be done in the next couple of weeks. So there are a few things we're still wrapping up on that one. This is the next one with the grand opening tomorrow. This is Creek Ridge Park. Friday. Right. Creek Ridge is a partnership with Edge Homes. They have put this park in for us, and our contribution is the surfacing. We upgraded the playground surfacing from playground mulch to rubber surfacing, which is what I would really like to see on every playground project that we do. It's just a little less than 2 acres. The best thing I think about this park is it's not a detention basin. It's actually flat grass.
An actual
So,
park.
we're excited about that.
Is this our first park?
And they've been a great partner in working with us on this park. The playgrounds are really
You can't
fun,
call them parks.
and it's going to be a great addition to this area.
Is this the one that we convinced them to split?
Yeah, the detention's just on the north side.
So with your support and the commission support, that's how that was came about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's going to turn out to be a great space. LML Hamilton, we're working with Ivory Homes on this. Again, another planning commission recommendation on this park from a while ago. This is going to be our first inclusive playground for all abilities. Again, the rubberized surface will have access for wheelchairs and those that might need more assistance with walkers to access some of the play components on the top. This will also have an asphalt path around the edge and then a detention basin. But still, our contribution, we received a grant for the playground structure. Our contribution is really the playground surfacing upgrade and the restroom facilities. So this will be another great park. It's about 4 acres. Yes, about 4 acres.
What's the timing on that one?
They should start grading. We've given them the permission to start grading.
We're pushing their design engineering plans completed. We just kind of waiting for them to come in. So they can start grading anytime, just like what we have.
We do have restrictions on our grant, and they have restrictions on their side too. So it's in both our interests to move quickly on this one. I think we wrapped up the detention basin issues that we've had for drainage.
They get started, they can finish this fall. So I think it will be done this fall.
Okay, Prairie Oaks, we are building a bathroom and pavilion structure at Prairie Oaks. That has been going a lot slower than I like, but they'll get there. So hopefully in September around Labor Day, we'll have that facility open. Just in time to close it for the winter, but that's okay. It'll be great next year. And then we have several projects that will be starting in the next couple months. The dog park plan. Everybody's gonna be so excited unless it's in their backyard and no one.
Where? That's the question, is where is the dog park?
The Wyatt Hollow Trailhead design, and then we'll continue our discussions about Juniper Canyon. So,
Where's it gonna be? Where's the dog park gonna be?
we have a couple of those questions.
Yeah, that's the answer I was expecting.
There's a couple locations that we're talking about. One is we call it Bobcat Park, that's just down here on Main Street, the detention basin that's there, just north of the apartments. So that area, there are a lot of dogs in this area. We think that would be a really good location for it. It's about a 4-acre piece there. There's also, out on Harriman, Maine, further west. So there's a couple places that we're looking at, and maybe even further south.
Is that with the county or?
No, so the county, I talked to the county a few times. They will not build anything smaller than 10 acres. So if we have 10 acres we want to give them for a dog park, then they'll work with us. If not, they're not. Yes, so disc golf course, we get this question a lot. On
Ball golf course, that's what I want.
August.
Real golf course.
A real golf course.
Come on. Come on.
Remember the water
gonna be less.
We have a very eager and enthusiastic young man who has put together an idea for the disc golf course. And so he's going to be presenting that to council on August 14th. And he's worked with our park staff and our GIS staff to kind of lay everything out. He's going to be presenting that. I don't want to steal his thunder, but I think it's a pretty cool idea. There are some concerns with it in the location and the pressure it may put on the area, which we discussed with Ian, but it's still continuing discussion.
And real golf.
And real golf.
We need to. No discussions there? Real golf. Come on. Good.
I love real golf, top golf.
Real golf. It's a good start.
So the only other thing, and it's not a concern or a question really, is I bring it up because I know everybody loves pickleball. So I was down in at Bear Lake, and they expanded. It was just they expanded their pickleball just a little wider with the net, and then they had the posts that were higher that just literally went up for volleyball. And so if we look at mixed use of pickleball, volleyball. Yeah.
So they're pretty.
This was on smaller. This is not like a 6 or 8 one. This was on single ones. It was a small park. That was pretty nice. It had basketball, pickleball, and volleyball, and then a full tennis on the other side. It was a very small park that was very well used.
We have had a lot of questions about pickleball. We have had a lot of questions about pickleball. I've had in capital project plan an idea to replace some of our aging playgrounds and pickleball. Playgrounds that probably need to not be maintenance anyway, just have it not funded. I believe Riverton's is discussing putting some in, so.
Let them do it.
We'll kind of wait and see. I think 4 plexes or maybe 6 are probably good, but, you know, the comment that I get from a lot of football players is I go and there's nowhere, it's always busy, it's always packed. Well, it's because they're going when everybody else is going. And that's going to be a situation.
Sure.
When you go at peak times, you're not going to be able to
Absolutely.
get access.
So.
When are there programmable parks? I mean, you know I'm a soccer guy, but
Yes.
I'm not just soccer. I believe in athletics for kids, like sports. Are there any areas in the city we can build?
Yeah.
Areas like even, I mean, I know baseball, football, rugby, lacrosse.
We do have some significant opportunities. The Mountain Ridge area that Ed is working on has some significant park space that we would be able to put some of that on. And then we have that 43-acre parcel in the future that's out west that we've talked about several times. That is intended as a sportplex.
Okay.
But how far out in the future that is comes with utilities and roads and all those other things. So.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. Item 3, future meetings. Planning Commission meeting will be Thursday, August 1st, which is tomorrow at 7 p.m. Item 3.2 is City Council meeting, which will be Wednesday, August 14th, 2019 at 7 p.m. And I will look for a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. I'm gonna come back tomorrow now, too. Aren't you excited?
See you tomorrow. Same bat channel.
I'm surprised Steve's not here.
So you guys notice a theme with water? People use it more. Keep going. It's like more expensive. How many times have you seen more expensive? The county's like, we know we can charge. Nobody can expensive.
Come on, man. Of course.
Well, I always like how they put something together to look like, oh yeah, it's still better over here. You see this? And it's like, wait, you're not comparing apples to apples.
Right next to the shooting range. I know.